Chapter 5:21. Qin Yu couldn't remember when he had become the nemesis of all dark and gloomy powers. Whether it was poisons or curses, he didn't reject them. The more the better. Each and every one of them had a fiendish appearance. They were simply food carts with red flags on them, blowing their horns and giving their all for the guests in their soul space. This sort of spirit was worthy of praise. Unfortunately, these food carts of love were destined to be one-off. It was a small regret that they couldn't be encouraged to work harder and continue to work harder. Within the layers of black curse threads, Qin Yu's lips twitched. He felt a bit ashamed of his lack of compassion. Others were already pitiful enough. So how could he mercilessly mock them? Between people, the most basic emotions had to be taken into account. I can't laugh, I have to be solemn and dignified. But it's really hard to endure. In particular, through the cosmic sea-cross bell, Qin Yu could faintly feel the fluctuations of the old servant's thoughts not too far away. You have a lot of curse strength. Hee, I'm only afraid you don't have enough. 20%, 30%, 40%. The calm and composed old servant suddenly revealed a dignified expression. With so much curse strength, even a peak blue sea would be able to kill several of them. Yet this boy hadn't died yet. No, something must have gone wrong. A trace of unease gushed out from the old servant's heart. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead, as if something bad was about to happen. Perhaps he should be more cautious and investigate the situation before doing anything. The old servant's thoughts stirred. He wanted to take back the cursed strength, but in the next moment his complexion changed. This was because he discovered to his amazement that the curse that wrapped around Qin Yu's body seemed to grow onto him. He simply couldn't take it back. No, not only could he not take it back, but he couldn't break it. It was like a pair of terrifying shackles that connected the two of them together. The old servant took a deep breath. His incomparably old face seemed to stir up a whirlwind. All the wrinkles twisted and twisted, making him look fierce and terrifying. Open! With a loud shout, the black threads began to burn. Within the black and gray flames, they were burnt to ashes. The old servant's back instantly bent, as if he had consumed too much strength. He didn't even look at Qin Yu, who was wrapped up in the black and gray flames. He turned and left. His body sank into the darkness, fusing into it and vanishing from sight. The older one was in Jianghu. The more timid they became. This saying was absolutely reasonable. This old servant had lived to this day and had killed countless people in his life. What scene had he not seen? However, it was precisely because he had seen so much that he understood what it meant to fail miserably in an easy task. He had seen it with his own eyes many times. The Qi clan was very powerful, and they had many ways to kill Yao Bin. There was no need for them to take the risk. Even if they were to retreat in defeat today, they could always find another opportunity in the future. He was old and his spirit was not good, but he never lacked patience. Therefore, the old servant walked neatly without any hesitation. In the courtyard, the ash-black flames gradually extinguished, revealing Qin Yu's calm face. His eyes flashed with a bit of surprise. Shadow step. It turned out that he was not the only one who knew how to do this. Although Undying was still in a deep slumber state, he had clearly recovered a great deal. This was because he could now use the supernatural ability he gifted Qin Yu. So, after a moment of surprise, Qin Yu said in a soft voice, "The guests haven't eaten their fill yet, so how can I let you leave?" He stepped into the light and shadows, his body blending into it. Outside the dawn perch inn, under a large tree, the street lamp illuminated the mottled shadows of the tree. Somewhere in the shadows of the branches, there was a sudden movement. The old servant walked out, his face pale. He turned his head and looked at the quiet dawn perch inn. His face darkened. For so many years, as long as he took action, he would always succeed. He never imagined that today he would be pecked in the eye. This boy was too strange. He had to tell the young master as soon as possible so that he could be more careful and not be careless. However, with the young master's personality, the more outstanding this Yao Bin's performance was, the heavier his killing intent would be. He would definitely think of a way to keep Yao Bin in Heavenly Demon City. The old servant's eyes blurred, revealing a bit of infatuation. The young master's personality was just so likable. He coughed several times and was about to leave when his complexion changed. He whipped his head around. The shadows of the trees parted like water. Qin smiled and said, "Since you've come, why go back? Life in this world is filled with hardships. Let me help you free yourself from them." The old servant cried out, "That's impossible. You actually know the shadow transformation art." Qin Yu shook his head. "I call it shadow step. I don't know what shadow transformation art is, but that isn't important. Let's continue." The old servant turned and ran away. Seeing the old servant disappear into the shadows, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He followed. In a corner, two people appeared one after another. Then in an alley, in a loft, Qin Yu's lips curved up. Indeed, the so-called shadow transformation art was extremely taxing on the soul. After using it again and again, the old servant's aura weakened a great deal. That was about enough. Then it was time to end this. If he played around too much, he would end up ruining himself. Shwa, shadow transformation art appeared once more. The old servant was panting for breath. His originally pale face was now devoid of blood. He raised his head and glanced at the distant, brightly lit and majestic mansion. Joy flashed in his dim eyes. If he used the shadow transformation art once more, he would be able to smoothly enter the Qi family. At that time, he would be safe and the young master would naturally protect him. The old servant smiled. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the feeling of his soul turning into nothingness. Then he stepped forwards. His body began to transform, fusing with the shadows beneath his feet. Just as he was about to finish, a hand reached out from the shadows. Qin Yu calmly said, "Just what are you thinking of doing?" The old servant was shocked. He didn't care about exposing himself. Just as he was about to cry out for help, he froze. His weak soul could no longer resist the suppression of the cosmic Sea-Cross spell. Faint traces of purple moonlight shined into his soul space. At this time, the purple moon also attacked. This was quite strange. It seemed that the cursed strength within the old servant's body was to its liking. Bang! A terrifying strength erupted from Qin Yu's body. The old servant's body tensed, and the cursed strength in his body surged out like a broken dam. If this sort of feeling had to be described, it would be like someone smashing open your skull, taking out a tube, and forcefully sucking it in. Just thinking about that feeling made one's hair stand on end. In fact, the pain the old servant was withstanding right now was absolutely far more terrifying than this. This was because the cursed strength in his body had already fused together with him. Every inch of his flesh and blood, every inch of his bones, every inch of his organs was twitching. Indeed, if one walked by the river, sooner or later their shoes would be wet. In this life, he had killed far too many people, and his retribution had finally arrived. The old servant knew a long time ago that ever since he stepped onto the cursed path, he was doomed to die a miserable death. But he didn't regret this, because this was what his young master needed. For his young master, he was willing to do anything, even if his young master never knew what he was thinking. But was this important? The old servant used up the last of his strength to straighten his curled back. He looked up at the Qi family's residence not too far away and let out a light breath. His pupils began to slacken. His life had been far too tiring. It was time for him to take a good rest. After several breaths of time, Qin Yu loosened his hand, allowing the thin corpse to fall to the ground. He glanced at the Qi family and then stepped into the shadows. Ancestral temple. Qi Dongtai, who was sitting in the high chair with his eyes closed in meditation, suddenly opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of black blood. The fourth branch head was frightened. he said in panic. "Father, what is wrong?" Chi Dongtai had a blank look in his eyes. After several breaths of time, he suddenly stood up and walked outside. A moment later, the main doors of the Chi family opened. Chi Dongtai silently walked out, heading straight towards the willow tree not too far away. A corpse was quietly lying beneath the willow tree. Its body was bent over, as if it had suffered a great deal of pain before dying. Even so, its face was calm and peaceful. The fourth branch head's pupils shrank, revealing a look of fear and alarm. This was because the one who had died beneath the willow tree was his father's old servant. How could this sinister and terrifying old dog quietly die like this? They were shocked, speechless, but deep in their hearts, they couldn't help but feel a bit more relaxed. Of course, the sorrow on their faces didn't lessen in the least because of this. This old dog had followed his father since he was a child and was the person he trusted the most in his life. In his heart, his status was likely even higher than that of his sons. Chi Dongtai took a deep breath. He squatted down and slowly reached out a hand, closing the old servant's eyes that were staring at the Chi family's residence. When the eyes left his face, the steady palm actually began to gently tremble. The third branch head fell to his knees. "Father, the dead cannot come back to life. Please restrain your grief and don't harm your body." Chi Dongtai spun around and sent him flying with a slap. "Father." The third branch head's face was swollen and purple. His eyes were filled with innocence. Chi Dongtai harshly said, "Shut up. If it weren't for the little beast you gave birth to, Xia Yan wouldn't have died today. If you weren't my son, I would have killed you right now." No one had the time to gloat. Everyone was silent out of fear. They looked at the old ancestor who was like a volcano, their faces filled with panic. The old ancestor cultivated his mind and soul and hadn't lost his temper for many years. Even when Qi Yinshu died, he was still able to maintain his calm. It could be imagined just how bad his mood was right now. No longer paying attention to the people kneeling on the ground, Chi Dongtai picked up the dead old servant from the ground. He suddenly discovered that the old servant was as light as a feather without any pressure at all. A sour feeling surged in his heart. He looked up and forcefully suppressed these emotions. Then he turned and walked towards the Qi family residence, whispering to himself, "Xia Yan, we have been friends for a lifetime. I naturally know what you are thinking in your heart, but I cannot accept it. Thus, I pretended that I didn't know. In truth, I wanted to tell you a long time ago that there was no need for you to live so hard. But I was greedy and didn't want you to leave the Qi family. I hoped that you could help me strengthen the Qi family. You stayed in the Qi family your entire life, but when you finally died, you died outside the walls of my Qi family. I find this hard to bear. But don't worry, I know who killed you. I guarantee you that he will leave with you. Of course, I am well aware that the person who killed you isn't easy to deal with, so I will quietly wait for a chance. I ask that you be more patient. What I promised you, I will definitely accomplish it." Climbing up the stairs, Chi Dongtai looked up at the main entrance. "How many years has it been since you entered or left from the main entrance? You said that this was the right of the master and that as a servant, you had to abide by your duties. You told everyone that you were a dog at my side, but I always regarded you as my brother. Today, this young master will bring you home from the main entrance." Chapter 5:22. Someone from the Qi family had died. This couldn't be hidden from the eyes of those with a clear mind. When it was determined that the one who died was the old servant beside the Qi family old ancestor, countless people widened their eyes in shock and panic. Then, with the fastest speed possible, they withdrew all the people they sent to investigate. The old servant had always declared himself to be a dog, but in truth he had an extremely high status in the Qi family. Sometimes he could even issue orders on behalf of the Qi family old ancestor. When the heads of the Qi family's fourth branch met him, they had to greet him like a nephew. not daring to show the slightest disrespect. If such an important character died in the night, would the Qi family old ancestor give up? Moreover, if Qi Yinshu was added in, the Qi family had already lost 2 lives to Yao Bin's hands. As for why it was Yao Bin, this question didn't need an answer, and there was no need for evidence. Everyone was afraid that they would be implicated by the Qi family's crazy revenge, so they couldn't wait to retract their feelers. But what surprised them was that the Qi family was abnormally quiet. They actually didn't respond to this matter at all. But this time, no one went to mock the Qi family. This was because the old servant's death had already demonstrated their tough stance. Even if one became a disciple of the demonic path, they would still make them pay with their lives. Their current silence couldn't be because they had given up. The greatest possibility was that they were waiting for a chance. This matter wouldn't be easily forgotten. City Lord Mansion. The Lord Demon Envoy played with a ball of light in his hands. Light and shadow flickered within. It was the complete process of how Qi Yinshu and the old servant had been killed. Xia Yan's curse power is quite strange. He was actually able to ignore it. No, to be more accurate, he plundered all of the curse power in Xia Yan's body. He whispered to himself and then revealed a smile. This brat Yao Bin is even more mysterious than I imagined. This was for the best. He feared that Tai Bin was too weak and wished that he was even fiercer than he was. The more cards he had in his hands, the less likely it was to die. This was because the road he wanted to walk was far too dangerous. His 5 fingers closed, and the ball of light was annihilated. The Lord Demon Envoy calmed down and looked outside. Yen Lu walked in with light steps. She was like a honey peach, each and every movement of hers filled with charm and charm. Lord Demon Envoy seems to be quite leisurely today. I'm surprised that you aren't cultivating. Ripples of light flowed in her beautiful eyes, as if she was silently saying something, causing one to be unable to help but be mesmerized. The Demon Envoy had a calm expression. Why have you come? She rolled her eyes at him. Fortunately, she had come to understand his thoughts over the years. If he was unwilling to talk about it, there was no need for her to pester him about it. Yen Lu placed her hands on the long table and lowered her waist. Her chest became more and more shocking. She said softly, I came to remind you, Lord Demon Envoy. It seems that many people are interested in the kid you've been paying attention to. The Demon Envoy was expressionless. So what? Yen Lu blinked. When a mature woman made such a childish gesture, it was especially alluring. Are you really not worried at all? Although that Brad has some cultivation and his methods are ruthless enough, the ones paying attention to him are all big tigers. If you're not careful, you'll die. The Demon Envoy lightly said, If he dies, then he dies. What does it have to do with me? He looked up, his eyes sharp. I don't like being tested by others. You are no different. Yen Lu humphed. After saying that she didn't want to say anything, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a graceful and charming woman. The Demon Envoy furrowed his eyebrows. As expected, she had sensed something. But he had brought Yen Lu with him because he had no other choice. Otherwise, if he were to go out alone, he would definitely be sensed by someone's divine sense. Luckily, Yen Lu wouldn't ruin his plans and she wouldn't randomly say anything. Otherwise, that would truly be troublesome. Thinking about the situation Yao Bin was facing right now, the Demon Envoy frowned. Perhaps he should think of a way to find a protective talisman for him. Although it might not be able to scare away all the wolves, it would at least give him a layer of protection. Or, at the very least, in a dangerous moment, it would give him a chance to intervene and protect his position. Otherwise, once others discovered his true thoughts, Yao Bin would undoubtedly die. In a dark study, the doors and windows were tightly shut. A dim yellow oil lamp emitted a weak light that was swallowed up by the darkness, leaving one feeling particularly depressed. A figure was sitting behind a round table. His back was facing the door, as if he were savoring the charm hidden in the darkness. Elder, our probing failed. That trash Qi Yunshu was killed on the spot. The Qi family retaliated, but unfortunately the cursed master they sent also died not too far away from the Qi family's residence without leaving behind any useful information. The black-clothed man fell to his knees. This subordinate was incompetent. "Elder, please punish me." As he spoke, his voice was clearly distorted, dry and without any emotion. "I already know what happened, so I don't blame you for this. I underestimated Yao Bin's reaction. I never thought he would dare to counterattack in such a strong manner." He paused for a moment before continuing, "But we didn't come away empty-handed." The black-clothed man revealed a puzzled look. "Elder, please explain." The figure seemed to smile. "Qi Yinshu died, and Xia Yan also died. The Qi family has already formed a mortal enmity with Yao Bin. As long as there is hatred, there will be a motive to attack. We must find a way to obtain this motive so that we can openly deal with Yao Bin in the future. However, there are many people interested in him right now. We have already attacked once, so there is no need to be in such a hurry to attack again. Let the others rush ahead. Remember, sometimes when you watch from the sidelines, you can discover many things that you can't." The black-clothed man said, "This subordinate understands. It is just that if we delay for too long, don't worry, it is impossible to refine and absorb the demon blood crystal in a short period of time. Taking a step back, even if Yao Bin really manages to do it, I still have a way to make him spit it out with interest." The black-clothed man didn't say anything else. After bowing, he stood up and left. The figure turned around. Because of the dim light, it was extremely blurry. It didn't seem to be the face of a person, but rather a fierce demon mask. "Yao Bin, the lost demon blood crystal, is it on you or not? I'm really looking forward to it." In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Everything was calm and tranquil. The mess in Dawn Perch Inn had already been cleaned up. Stepping on the light of dawn, a cultivator quickly arrived. He flew straight to Qin Yu's residence and respectfully said, "Lord Yao Bin, I have come on orders. I ask that you follow me to the City Lord Mansion." The courtyard doors opened from within. A slightly cramped Duan San had changed into the gray robes of a servant. He cupped his hands together and bowed. "Please wait a moment. My master will be here soon." The messenger cultivator was startled and then revealed a look of envy. Being a servant wasn't a glorious matter, but one had to look at who they were following. A servant of a demonic path disciple could also be considered a member of the demonic path and could follow them into a small world. Just the heaven-defying cultivation environment alone was enough for countless cultivators to flock to. Thus, every time the demon ascension gate opened, there would be countless demonic path cultivators. Some of them came from extraordinary backgrounds and would take the initiative to apply to become a servant of a new disciple. Besides having a bit of good looks, this boy's aura was ordinary. Yet he had actually been chosen. He really had some dog's hit luck. Chapter 5:23. Following behind Duan San, out of the courtyard was his sister, Duan Jiu. She was really like a Jiu flower, a delicate and beautiful girl. She wasn't tall, but every part of her body was proportionally balanced. Because she was weak and sickly all year round, her skin was pale, and one could see the tiny light blue blood vessels beneath her skin. Now that she was wearing the same color-made dress as Duan San, it didn't hide her beauty at all. Instead, it made one want to protect her from the bottom of their hearts. When the reporting cultivator saw Duan Jiu, he was stunned for a moment. Looking at the similarities between the two of them, a look of understanding appeared on his face. He seemed to have found the reason why Duan San was chosen. So when Qin Yu arrived, he could clearly sense something strange in this person's eyes. Of course, when Qin Yu seriously looked at him, he found that this person had already changed into an extremely respectful appearance. Gossiping and whatnot, of course it was okay, but if one didn't know when to stop, that would be asking for trouble. "Lord Yao Bin, the transmission array has been prepared." You and the other disciples will enter the demonic path's small world in batches today. Please follow me to the City Lord Mansion as soon as possible to avoid affecting the transmission arrangements. Chinyu nodded. Let's go. The current shopkeeper of Don Perch Restaurant was still the old man who loved money. He stood at the place where the front yard and back yard connected, watching Duan-san and Duan-ji walk over. His eyes were slightly excited. However, the two sides didn't communicate, otherwise it would only bring more trouble to this old man who was about to leave. Duan-san swore in his heart that if he was successful in the future, he would find a way to repay this uncle of his. Sitting in the flying carriage arranged by the city lord's mansion, Duan-san and Duan-ji slowly calmed down. But looking at the luxurious decorations inside the carriage, they couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable. Chinyu saw this but didn't say anything. There were some things that couldn't be solved with words alone. They would just have to get used to it in the future. He smoothly arrived at the city lord's mansion. Today, when he looked at the majestic mansion again, although it was still as majestic as before, it was no longer as terrifying and oppressive as before. It seemed that because of the changes at the Demon Ascension Gate, the demonic path supreme elders that had gathered here had already left. Qin Yu's heart relaxed. This was absolutely a good thing for him, because at the very least, no one had managed to obtain any evidence against him. As for suspicions, as the last person to leave the ancient tree monster, even if everyone knew that he didn't have the strength to complete the hunt, he still couldn't completely wash away all suspicions. But now, Qin Yu was a member of the demonic path, and his performance was outstanding. Many people knew of his existence. Even if there were people who harbored ill intentions, they wouldn't dare to make things difficult for him without evidence. However, in the future, he would have to be more careful and try not to give others anything to use against him. Inside the city lord's mansion, one of the palaces had disappeared without a trace. In its place was a massive formation that was incredibly complex and took up an area of several acres. A group of expressionless demonic path array masters were seizing this time to make final adjustments and experiments. Right now, the one who stayed behind to manage the teleportation was the master of Heavenly Demon City, a thin, purple-robed old man. Although his appearance wasn't anything to look at, for him to be able to control the Heavenly Demon City of the demonic path for over 1,000 years, his strength couldn't be underestimated. Even if he restrained his aura, it still left one's chest feeling heavy. After Qin Yu arrived, he verified his identity and smoothly received his transmission number. The fourth batch, because the demonic path had decided to absorb all the surviving cultivators from the small worlds. There were nearly 2,000 new disciples. This was the highest number of disciples the demonic path had ever recruited in history. In addition, there were some demonic path disciples that brought servants with them like Qin Yu, making the number even more astonishing. Even though the transmission array was temporarily strengthened, the entire transmission process had to be divided into 5 batches. The first batch of disciples enter the transmission array. With a loud shout, the crowd began to clamor. Several hundred new demonic path disciples flew out with excited expressions. In order to leave the Demon Ascension Gates, small world alive, the demonic path disciples had to have good luck. But besides luck, everything else wasn't certain. Strictly speaking, out of the nearly 2,000 new disciples, there weren't many that truly met the requirements to become a demonic path disciple. This was because when the sage controlled the ancient tree monster avatar and hunted them down, the ones he chose were relatively outstanding demonic path cultivators. For many people today, being able to become a demonic path disciple was a completely pleasant surprise. Because of this, besides setting the highest number in history, the quality of the disciples was also the lowest in history. It was known as the worst batch since the founding of the demonic path. The massive array formation on the ground lit up. Boundless strength erupted, instantly distorting space. The radiant divine light made it hard for one to look at it directly. Bang! A straight beam of light smashed into the skies, breaking apart the vault of heaven and forming a rainbow-colored vortex. A moment later, the humming sound subsided and the light slowly faded away. The distorted space was restored to normal. The first transmission array formation ended. Many cultivators revealed excited expressions. They thought that this was truly worthy of being the demonic path. Even though it was only a single transmission array formation, it still created such a majestic momentum. And most importantly, after today, they would officially become members of the demonic path. After an hour of adjustment, the second transmission array formation began. As if they had gained experience, they paused for a moment and then began the third transmission array formation. The fourth batch of disciples enter the transmission array. Qin Yu turned and ordered, "Follow me." Duan San, and Duanji nodded. The two of them had never seen such a grand scene before. They were already nervous beyond belief. Luckily, Qin Yu took care of them. He didn't advance too quickly, and the two of them followed closely behind. Because of this, when they arrived at the transmission array formation, it was already filled with cultivators. Qin Yu handed over the transmission number and smoothly entered the array formation. But Duan San, and Duanji were stopped. "This batch has already been filled. Wait for the next batch." Qin Yu turned and said, "They are my servants. Since that's the case, I will go with them." The array master had no expression. "You have already entered the transmission array. If you leave now, it will affect the safety of the array formation. Do not delay." He lifted a hand. "Prepare to be transmitted." Qin Yu frowned. Duan San hurriedly said, "Master, you can go first. This is the city lord mansion. No one will make things difficult for us here." The array formation began to shine with light. Qin Yu took a deep breath. "Be careful. I will be waiting for you." Bang! A beam of light shot into the skies, crashing into the vault of heaven. His field of vision instantly darkened. When it recovered, Qin Yu discovered that he was in a sea of stars. Beneath his feet was a giant jade disc carved with countless runes. It slowly rotated, carrying everyone through the sea of stars. Everyone's eyes widened. As they looked at the scene before them, their faces were filled with awe. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change, but his heart shook. This was because he discovered that the sea of stars in front of him wasn't an illusion. In other words, they had borrowed the power of the array formation to tear open the world barrier and arrive at the outer realm. Could it be that the small world of the demonic path's holy land was actually outside this world? Suddenly, the runes on the surface of the jade disc beneath their feet began to shine. A barrier of light appeared, covering everyone within. In the next moment, a meteor with a long flaming tail howled into everyone's line of sight. Everyone cried out in alarm. Their hearts leapt into their throats. Luckily, they didn't collide with each other. The two sides passed each other several miles apart. Even so, the terrifying strength carried with it still caused the jade disc to violently tremble. Everyone found it hard to steady themselves, and their faces paled. An hour later, a point of light appeared. It was like a lighthouse, guiding the jade disc forward. Suddenly, as if it had crashed into an invisible stream of water, the jade disc clearly became sluggish and began to slowly squeeze out of this area. In the next moment, everything opened up in front of everyone. A brand new world appeared in front of them, and in the skies hung 9 great suns. Chapter 5:24. 9 great suns shined brilliantly, but they didn't dazzle the eyes at all. There wasn't any burning heat, only endless warmth. Bathing in the sunlight, one felt as if they were soaking in a hot spring. Their entire body was warm, and faint traces of heat constantly fused into their bodies. Qin Yu silently felt the warm energy spread through his body, his heart shaking. This strange energy could actually simultaneously nourish the mortal body, magic power, and soul. Although the amount was small and the degree of improvement was almost imperceptible, If it were accumulated over time, the increase would be considerable. Moreover, the entire Holy Land small world was filled with rich heaven and earth spiritual strength that nearly condensed into mist. With such a cultivation environment, it was no wonder that countless people were willing to become servants in order to join the demonic path. The demonic path's Holy Land forbids any noise. Everyone follow the directions and enter the designated area. Once everyone has arrived, we will send you away. External Affairs Protector Xan frowned, a gloomy look in his eyes. The great figures had decided to recruit nearly 2,000 disciples, so they naturally had their own considerations. Protector Xan didn't dare to express any dissatisfaction, but the sudden increase in work had left him battered and exhausted for the past several days, so he naturally wasn't in a good mood. He had originally only prepared for 200 new disciples, but now it had increased by 10 times. Even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he still wouldn't have enough time in several days. Without any other choice, Protector Xan could only temporarily select a batch of houses that he had prepared as rewards for outstanding disciples in the last great examination. Because of this, he had received no small amount of complaints. If there were some outstanding characters in this batch of disciples, Protector Xan would feel a bit better. At the very least, he would be able to form a good relationship with them today. Perhaps they would be of great use in the future. But look, all you could see were crooked melons and cracked dates. It was simply a tragic sight. He really couldn't understand why the lords would accept such trash. This was simply dragging down the overall quality of the demonic path. In truth, this was also the attitude held by the vast majority of cultivators in the demonic path. Therefore, after the initial excitement, shock, and joy, the high-spirited newbies subconsciously shrank their necks when they were stared at by unfriendly gazes, and they obediently landed on the ground. The first 3 batches of people were all here, and the earliest batch had already waited for over 2 hours. From this, it could be seen that they didn't regard these new disciples as anything special at all. Qin Yu smiled inwardly. Indeed, bullying the weak and fearing the strong was a fine traditional virtue. Even in the demonic path, it was a widespread inheritance. He closed his eyes and meditated. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve. At the same time, he began to think about how he would act after entering the demonic path. The truth was that the main theme had already been set. If Qin Yu wanted to rise up as soon as possible and obtain enough authority to become a pivotal figure in the demonic path, he needed to display a sufficiently outstanding performance. Thus, he couldn't keep a low profile. It was just that with the appearance of the demon blood crystals, there were many people that were secretly harboring evil intentions. If he continued to maintain a high profile, then it was likely that someone would grab hold of him. This matter must be carefully considered. There weren't many good men and women in the demonic path. If the demon blood crystal was exposed, then Qin Yu was sure that he would immediately be dismembered and then cleanly divided up by others. It had to be known that the demon blood crystal was still within his body. Although it was constantly nourishing his mortal body at this rate of absorption, it would take at least 8 to 10 years for it to become his own. What a delightful yet headache-inducing matter. As Qin Yu was lost in thought, he was awakened by a loud rumble. The last batch of cultivators had arrived. He looked up into the skies. Ripples rose up in space as a giant disk squeezed out from within. In the next moment, everyone on the disk revealed shocked expressions. The cultivators to the left and right couldn't help but reveal looks of pride, as if they had forgotten that not too long ago they were also like bumpkins. But now, Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to show that he was experienced and knowledgeable. He swept his eyes around and soon found the siblings Duan-san, and Duanjiu. He frowned, revealing a cold intent. The 5th batch of cultivators flew off the disc. Duan-san's figure shook and he nearly fell from the skies. Duan-jiu quickly caught him, preventing him from suffering the tragic fate of falling to his death as soon as he entered the Holy Land. Even so, he still caused everyone to roar with laughter. Protector Xion's eyes twitched. Although this person was only wearing the clothes of a servant, the servants of a dignified, demonic path holy land were all top figures. Yet such a shameful thing had actually mixed in. Humph! With a cold snort, Protector Exan ordered his assistant to take care of the following matters. Then he turned and left. If he continued to watch, he feared that his blood pressure would rise and his blood vessels would explode. Duan-san, Ari's face flushed red with shame. Master, I've lost face for you. Duan-jiu tried to defend herself. Big brother, it was clearly someone who deliberately injured you. Duan-san shouted out, Shut up! He could guess that the reason he was being targeted was because of Chinyu, but now his master had just entered the demonic path, so it wasn't appropriate for him to cause unnecessary trouble. However, some people clearly didn't want to see them leave like this. A new disciple walked over and coldly said, Junior apprentice brother Yao Bin, right? Your servant is too insolent to think that he would dare to offend me. Today, I only had one of my subordinates give him a small punishment. I hope that you will discipline him well. Next time, it won't be so simple. He spoke with an aggressive and arrogant attitude. Behind him, a tall and bald fellow with a fierce face grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth as if he didn't care at all. His words instantly attracted everyone's attention. After a moment of surprise, they immediately revealed looks of excitement. No matter what the reason was, it was fine as long as there was some fun to watch. Moreover, after entering the demonic path, as cultivators of the same generation, they were destined to compete with each other. If the two of them had a conflict because of this, they might be severely punished. Wouldn't that mean they could eliminate two competitors ahead of time? Brother Yao Bin, do something. They've already come knocking on our door, so how can we endure this? Erupt with your little universe and punch that guy's face to pieces. I'm optimistic about you. Duan-san hurriedly said, Master, it's just a small injury. There's no need to worry about it. Duan-jiu bit her lips, her eyes full of anger. How was this a small injury? If it weren't for her big brother's quick reactions, he would have already been sent flying out of the transmission disc. That would have killed him. Qin, you keenly discovered a flash of urgency in this Gong Yu's eyes. He really was doing this on purpose. After the Qi family, was there someone else who couldn't restrain themselves and wanted to attack him? Today's plan wasn't too clever, but these youths were proud and arrogant. If they were angered and a battle broke out on the first day, no matter what the reason was, they likely wouldn't end well. This person in front of him must have obtained some sort of promise, so he wouldn't worry if something happened. If he was caught, the results wouldn't be good. His thoughts raced. After figuring everything out, Qin Yu's complexion returned to tranquility. His eyes were deep and faint. Senior apprentice, Brother Gong, right? I have no idea whose dog you are today, but I'm sorry, but I will have to disappoint you today because I won't come into conflict with you. But I will remember you. In the future, there will be opportunities for fellow apprentices to get closer. What does senior apprentice Brother Gong think? Gong Zhen's complexion stiffened and anger flashed in his eyes. He clenched his teeth, preparing to forcefully attack and force Qin Yu to break the rules together with him. But he saw Qin Yu turn and walk towards a demonic path cultivator. After a long time, he finally gave up. Senior apprentice brother, if I had attacked just now, what would have been the result? The demonic path cultivator revealed a strange look. He hesitated for a moment and said, If a new disciple breaks the rules, the punishment is always heavy. If you had attacked, the best result would have been 50 strokes of the paddle and you would have to stay in the dungeon for some time. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Thank you for telling me, senior apprentice brother. The person chuckled several times. There is no need to thank me. You should think about just who you have offended. Otherwise, it will be hard for you to have peace in the future. This person had good intentions. Qin Yu nodded and remembered his appearance. This person had been sent here to greet a group of mediocre new disciples. It seemed that this person hadn't been doing too well in the demonic path. If there was a chance in the future, Qin Yu didn't mind helping him out. Zhang Xian was very curious. How could a new boy be targeted by someone? Although he had warned him, he didn't believe that this calm boy would have a good ending. To dare to secretly plot against him on the first day, the person behind the scenes must be quite capable. Even if he could avoid it once or twice, could he avoid it every time? It was only a matter of time before he met with misfortune. But this sort of situation wasn't rare in the demonic path. He had only said a few words of advice on a whim and didn't place it in his heart. If Zhang Xian knew that the boy across from him was thinking of supporting him in the future, he wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. "All right, everyone follow me. We're going to your residences." Protector Xian's assistant gloomily said. He smacked his lips and couldn't help but curse. What a bunch of lucky bastards! Because these residences had important uses, whether it was their location or the scale of construction, they were all very good. Many senior disciples found it difficult to obtain one, but now they had been given to these poor people. The assistant felt extremely unbalanced. They sped along the way, passing through mountains and rivers and across plains. The vastness of the demonic path's holy land was revealed to everyone. There were over 2,000 people here, attracting everyone's attention. After they learned that these were new disciples, the demonic path cultivators all revealed mocking expressions. So it was this bunch of good-for-nothings that had walked into Dog's Hit Luck. As they looked around, their lips curled up even more. They really were trash that had turned into dregs. An hour later, the group finally arrived at their destination. In front of them was a towering mountain. The mountain was tall and straight, exuding a cold and arrogant aura. The assistant was the first to land. He glanced around with a bit of reluctance in his eyes. This place should have been his own residence. He couldn't think about it. It hurt his heart. As new disciples, you will be placed here. Starting from the foot of the mountain, the heaven and earth spiritual strength will gradually increase, and the size of the residences will also increase. In order to be fair, the distribution of residences will be based on your cultivation. You will have to rely on your own ability. The assistant flicked his sleeves, and a pure, white crystal fell to the ground. Strike this stone with all your strength, and it will release red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple lights. The difficulty of the 7 colors will gradually increase. Let's begin according to the transmission order. The first new disciple to attack took a long time to gather his strength. With a loud shout, he punched out. The pure white crystal emitted a faint hum, and a dark red color flashed across its surface. The assistant's lips twitched. He waved his hand. The last one, stand at the back. The person turned and drew back in shame. Then came the second person. His performance was slightly better. Although he was also red, the color was much richer. He stood in front of the first person. Red, red, red. It was no wonder that he was looked down upon. It had to be known that even a Holy Land servant with a bit of strength could strike this testing stone. Ordinary disciples were at least orange, and it was normal for them to be yellow. But these people... Chapter 5:25. Before Qin Yu made his move, the one with the best performance was blue. Although his color was a bit dim, for better or worse, he was still a 5th-grade disciple. This result was considered quite good even amongst the veteran demonic path disciples. Without accident, he would surely have some achievements in the future. The assistant revealed a smile. He whispered some words and agreed that once he settled down, everyone would come out to eat a meal and be intimate with each other. This scene caused everyone's eyes to heat up, but this was the cold and cruel reality. Those without strength would never obtain respect. Duanjiu looked at the newly promoted disciple who was trying his best to maintain his composure but couldn't hide it no matter what. She gently pursed her lips. She knew that this person was fierce and belonged to a master that she couldn't come into contact with before. But there was one thing she was sure of, and that was that her master was stronger than him. That night at Donperchin, She and her big brother had hidden in a room and witnessed the entire process of the old servant's appearance and escape. Although it seemed as if her master hadn't done anything at all, her big brother had told her that this was true fierceness. Duan Jiu thought about it and agreed. To stand there without moving and then finally scare away the enemy. What could be called fierceness if that wasn't fierceness? What's more, she later heard the news that someone in the Qi family had died that night. It was someone extraordinary. From that day onwards, the shopkeeper uncle's attitude towards her master became even more respectful. What would her master do today? Duan Jiu blinked her eyes, a bit of anticipation growing in her heart. Of course, part of the reason for this anticipation was to tell these people not to think of bullying her and her big brother anymore. They were following a very fierce master. In fact, Qin Yu's performance didn't disappoint Miss Duan. When it was his turn, he calmly stepped forward. His steps were steady and unhurried. The assistant glanced at him and then lowered his head. He picked at his nails, his expression listless. Early Blue Sea is still far from being called a revered. He's another trash that stepped on dog shit to enter our demonic path. TSK, in the past, in order to enter the demonic path. Just how much suffering do we have to endure, and how much effort did we put in? You might be putting on an act now, but what use is that? Whether you're a mule or a horse, we'll find out soon enough. Hum hum. This sort of trash, even if he was lucky enough to enter the demonic path, he was still doomed to be at the bottom. If he failed the decennial examination 3 times in a row, he would still be kicked out. While he was lost in his thoughts, he suddenly heard a buzzing sound, and the ground beneath his feet began to tremble slightly. The assistant's thoughts were in a mess. He was startled when he heard the commotion. Before he could regain his composure, he looked up and saw the demonic path disciple who was maintaining order next to him. This person is called Zhang Xian. He has a calm temperament, and he does things with a sense of propriety. It's just that his luck isn't too good. He made a mistake in his early years and wasn't taken seriously. Originally, he was thinking of finding an opportunity to promote him to a steward of the External Affairs Department. Although he was just an assistant protector, he still had the qualifications to be a small leader. But what happened today? Although his status wasn't high, for better or worse, he was still an old man of the demonic path. For him to reveal such an idiotic expression in front of a group of newcomers was simply shameful. The assistant decided in his heart that Zhang Xian could not be used. He had no shrewdness at all and would definitely fly into a rage when something happened. There was no value in grooming him. The assistant sentenced him to death in his heart. He turned his head and looked at Zhang Xian with some curiosity. Just what was happening? Then his mouth opened a little at a time. The exaggerated angle made one secretly sigh with emotion. He was truly worthy of being a demonic path disciple. His muscles and bones were amazingly flexible. Just look at his mouth. It was so big that it could almost fit an ox inside. Unfortunately, no one had the time to look at the assistant's disgraceful appearance. This was because everyone at the foot of the mountain felt as if they had been struck in the head with a stick. Their heads buzzed, and they lost the ability to think. At the foot of the mountain, the testing stone that had been placed on the ground was still constantly trembling. It was because of its trembling that the ground began to shake. The rich purple color was like a blossoming flower, wantonly unfolding in the air. The kind of purity was dazzling and dazzling. The assistant's entire mind was immersed in it. He didn't know how long he swayed before he finally regained his composure. Then his lips began to tremble. Deep purple. This was absolutely deep purple. Moreover, Qin Yu's fist had caused the testing stone to tremble. This proved that the strength of his fist had surpassed the limit that the testing stone could withstand. Although the testing stone for new disciples was only the introductory version, the highest strength it could withstand was still at the peak Blue Sea level. Thinking of this, the assistant's scalp tingled. If he didn't see this with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. Peak Blue Sea. This boy actually had peak Blue Sea strength. The assistant closed his mouth with great effort. He was so excited that his entire body shivered. At this time, he felt as if he were standing at the turning point of his destiny. Whether he would be mediocre or rich in his next life, it would all depend on this person in front of him. What nonsense! To have peak blue sea strength in the entrance test, even looking at the demonic path, this sort of character was extremely rare. To say that he had a bright future was already underestimating him. His future was simply limitless. Perhaps one day in the future, he would become an influential figure of the demonic path. If he could be on good terms with him while he was still humble, was there even a need to think about how much of an investment he would receive? This was a lucky chance bestowed by the heavens, a lucky chance bestowed by the heavens. The assistant was extremely excited. He hurriedly took out the list of new disciples. He had to remember this boy's identity first. As soon as he said his name and hinted that he already knew he was extraordinary, the distance between the two of them was instantly pulled closer. As for this Zhang Xian, his luck was truly good. He had seen the entire conversation between the two of them when Qin Yu questioned them. At that time, Qin Yu hadn't revealed his strength yet, so this could be considered an early investment. He would definitely leave behind a good impression. Comrade Zhang Xian was worth cultivating. Perhaps one day he would suddenly have a reversal of fortune. As for Comrade Zhang Xian, he was still confused. He looked at Qin Yu in front of him and then at the trembling purple testing stone. His face filled with confusion. Duan Jiu clenched her fists. Her pale face flushed with excitement, like a bright red apple, extremely alluring. Master was indeed the fiercest, and he was even fiercer than she had imagined. Purple, this was the highest level of purple. She proudly swept her eyes over the shocked and dazed figures around her. She couldn't help but look up, revealing her snow-white neck. We are servants personally chosen by Master. In the future, there won't be anyone that dares to bully Big Brother. Gongjin stiffened. The bald servant behind her had a fierce and ferocious expression on his face. His eyes were filled with fear. Before they acted, they had also inquired about some information. But they weren't clear. They only knew that this surname, Yao, was somewhat strong. But if one could become a demonic path disciple, no matter how weak they were, they still had some skill. Gongjin didn't care about this at all. But now, who could tell her why he had peak blue sea strength? Peak blue sea. That was a peak that many people would never be able to reach in their lives. If he could take another step forward and become a calamity immortal, Gongjin's face was drained of blood. Fear gushed out from the depths of her heart, drowning her. Countless eyes fell on Qin Yu, revealing a deep awe. The assistant had finally found Qin Yu's identity information. He swept out with his divine sense and remembered everything. He revealed the brightest smile on his face and was about to step forwards when a sneer sounded out from the crowd. So what if he's a peak blue sea? How could someone over 100 years old, or even older, compare to us? 100 years old, the assistant paused. Another new disciple said, "This is fellow Taoist Yao Bin from the Black Demon sect. According to what I know, fellow Taoist Yao joined Midway and had a profound blue sea cultivation in the past, and he has stayed in the Black Demon sect for over 80 years. This person's information was even more accurate. Everyone's spirits rose. If he was a blue sea 80 years ago, then how old was he now? A conservative estimate would be 200 years old or even more. Hee, what else is there to say? He's just an old fellow. When we reach his age, we might not be any worse than him. Moreover, a blue sea that was over 100 years old had limited potential. If he made another breakthrough in the future, it was unlikely he would step into the calamity immortal realm." The assistant looked over. As he saw Qin Yu's calm expression and that he didn't refute him, he was secretly disappointed. But he still squeezed out a smile. Fellow Taoist Yao Bin's cultivation has blasted out a deep purple color. There is no doubt that he will be the champion. Fellow Taoist can choose any courtyard on this mountain. His tone was friendly, but compared to the excitement from before, it was as different as the heavens and earth. If one didn't reach the calamity immortal realm, then in the demonic path, they would never be able to reach the highest heavens. Peak Blue Sea, the demonic path had accumulated over tens of millions of years. There was truly a great number of them. Every year, there would be a Peak Blue Sea cultivator that neared the end of their lifespan and couldn't make a breakthrough. They would die in their cave dwellings with hatred in their hearts. A lifetime of bitter cultivation. Tens of thousands of years of struggle, all turned into bubbles. Of course, a Peak Blue Sea was still an absolute powerhouse. Even in the entire land of divinity and demons, they could be considered an overlord. It was just that in the demonic path, the halo of such a powerhouse was greatly weakened. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He had replaced Yao Bin's identity, so he naturally couldn't refute these facts. But he believed that the true high-level figures of the demonic path would definitely know the truth. For instance, the two at Donperchen. His performance today was enough, and it would soon reach the upper echelons, attracting more attention for himself. And now, this kind of attention could become a protective barrier around one's body, causing those with ill intentions to feel fear in their hearts. As for what the people in front of him thought what they thought, was that important? To be honest, Qin Yu didn't care at all. Therefore, he withdrew his hand and calmly walked to the side. Humph! When the tiger is away from the mountain, the monkey is king. In this generation of disciples, there are several proud sons of heaven. For instance, the Zhao family scion, Zhao Qianyuan. He is a peak, peerless, proud son of heaven. The Dong family's Dong Hanzhu is also a rare character, and there is also the Western Tomb's highest Dutian, whose Tao arts are unparalleled under the heavens. As for Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qingwan, those two proud daughters of heaven are also outstanding existences that illuminate the highest heavens. These true proud sons of heaven have already been chosen by the elders to be their disciples. They entered the Holy Land ahead of time to cultivate and aren't together with us. Gong Zhen sneered again and again. Otherwise, how could our limelight have been stolen by an old fellow today? Since he had already offended them, there was no longer any fear. These words resonated with everyone. Many people nodded inwardly, looking at Qin Yu with a bit more ridicule in their eyes. So what if he was a Peak Blue Sea? They were all disciples of the demonic path. So how could he dare to attack them? Moreover, it was unknown who was stronger and who was weaker in the future. As long as he didn't reach the calamity immortal realm, there was no need to fear him. Duanjiyu's chest heaved up and down. She was so angry that her lips turned white. Why did these bastards always target my master? But was what they said true? Did her master really not have any potential left? Duan San let out a deep breath. He patted her shoulder and smiled. Our lives were saved by master. So why do we need to think so much about it? We just need to remember that no matter what happens, we are all master's servants. It is enough that we work for master loyally. Duanju quietly explained. I know that Big Brother is just not worth it for master. He is a good person. It was no wonder that when her big brother was injured, her master chose to endure it. So he had his own difficulties. Chapter 5:26. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change at all because of Gong Zhen's words, just like how a mountain wouldn't care about a weed that had taken root beneath its feet. But when his eyes inadvertently fell onto Duanjiu, he saw her sad, angry, and depressed expression. His eyes flashed. In particular, there was even a trace of pity in her eyes. Qin Yu was left speechless for a second. Even someone as high profile as him was pitiful today. How could this be? Of course, this wasn't anger, but a feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He turned to look at Gong Zhen, and his eyes turned cold. When I don't want to talk to you, I can ignore you, and when I'm impatient, I can slap you. Of course, I won't do that, but slapping you with words is the same. Gong Zhen sneered. What am I wrong? Qin Yu lightly said. How many of these people do senior apprentice, Brother Gong, know? He shook his head. Saying you know is too much of a compliment. How many have you seen? Gong Zhen's face flushed red, as if he had been ruthlessly humiliated. He clenched his teeth and said, "All the proud sons of heaven of the demonic path are like divine dragons. I have never seen any of them before." He looked up, a taunting look in his eyes. Could fellow Taoist Yao know of them? He was clearly returning these words to Qin Yu, but he didn't expect Qin Yu to seriously nod. "That's right, I know them." Gong Zhen was startled for a moment. Then he mercilessly laughed out loud. "When it comes to bragging, I truly admire you. Fellow Taoist Yao, do not forget that all the proud sons of heaven of the demonic path will hear of today's events sooner or later. At that time, your faces will be ugly." Qin Yu suddenly said, "After watching for so long, it's about time you came out. Strictly speaking, you were the one who sold me out, so you should feel some guilt in your heart." These words were abrupt, leaving everyone stunned. They didn't understand what he meant, but soon their eyes widened, as if their eyeballs would pop out of their sockets. Zhao Qianyuan stepped forwards. His hands were empty, and he didn't carry his symbolic dragon spear. But his calm and unruffled aura made it so that no one dared to underestimate him. Moreover, he was wearing a dark red robe with a golden collar. This was proof of his status as the demonic path's demon son. The assistant ran forwards beneath everyone's shocked eyes and bowed. "I greet Scion Zhao." His words stunned everyone. Their eyes were in a trance, as if they were facing a legend. Scion Zhao in the demonic path. Besides that person, there shouldn't be anyone who dared to call himself that. In other words, he really was Zhao Qianyuan. Zhao Qianyuan walked in front of Qin Yu and looked him up and down several times. He faintly smiled and said, "I'm fine. It looks like there's nothing wrong with you. That's a relief." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands together and bowed. "What happened that day was indeed my fault. I ask Brother Yao for forgiveness." Qin Yu's eyebrows rose up. "Successor, why are you being so polite?" Zhao Qianyuan stood up. "I've discovered that Brother Yao's breadth of mind seems to be limited. I don't want this matter to cause trouble for me in the future." He turned around and said seriously, "I can testify that Yao Bin really knows those people you just mentioned." He then added, "He knows all of them." Qin Yu had a calm expression. "I just arrived today, so I didn't prepare anything. I won't keep you as a guest, but if you come some other day, I'll treat you to a drink." Zhao Qianyuan readily agreed. "Dong Hanzhu is also here. He can't forget about you. Next time, I'll bring him along." Qin Yu nodded. "All right." Without staying for too long, Zhao Qianyuan left. But his appearance had already suppressed everyone so much that they couldn't breathe. Those mocking gazes turned to awe once more. This was Zhao Qianyuan. If he could personally come here to testify and speak as equals, could he be an ordinary person? Gong Zhen's complexion paled. Her face darkened, not saying a single word. Qin Yu walked over to Duan Jiyu's side. He looked at the smiling girl and lightly said, "Some people fart like thunder and their tongues are like cannons. It's fine to listen to them, but do you really want to lower yourself to their level? If you're really impatient, then one day you can make a move and the world will be peaceful again." I don't remember too clearly. Where did I hear this phrase from? If you can make a move, then don't make a fuss. Although it sounds a bit pretentious, sometimes it really does make sense. Duan Jiu nodded, a bright smile blooming on her face. The girl hesitated for a moment. Then her voice was as quiet as a mosquito. "Master, can you help me ask His Highness the successor for an autograph?" Qin Yu was stunned. He thought that when he was in the limelight and slapped the other side into a pig's head, was it really appropriate for her to speak like this? Humph! This was indeed the thoughts of a young girl. Chasing after stars wasn't a good idea. Otherwise one would suffer a great loss. The following test wasn't surprising at all. With Qin Yu taking action, everyone was suppressed to the point of being overshadowed. The assistant smiled. Fellow Taoist Yao Bin, the residence at the summit was specially decorated when it was built. Not only is it the most luxurious, but the cultivation environment is also better. He didn't fear others mocking and flattering him. To be able to stand on equal footing with Saiyan Zhao, so what if he was over 100 years old? Qin Yu nodded. All right, then this one. Since he decided to keep a high profile, this residence was naturally suitable for him. Perhaps some people still disapproved of this, but no one dared to continue expressing it. Even Gong Zhen had a gloomy expression, not saying a single word. Qin Yu had just said that if there came a day when he was impatient, then he could make a move and calm the world. Wasn't this the same as saying that he wanted to deal with him? Although he constantly told himself that he was someone with a backer, Xiao Gong still couldn't help but feel flustered. The residence at the summit was truly luxurious. There were large palaces here, and even several hundred people could live here. The entire residence was situated high up in the clouds. After entering, Qin Yu discovered what the assistant was talking about. 9 shining mirrors floated in the skies, corresponding to the 9 suns in the skies. They gathered more light and sprinkled it down. That mysterious energy that could nourish the soul, mortal body, and magic power was actually several times richer than in the outside world. It wasn't easy to manage such a large residence. Luckily, the assistant knew how to manage things. Soon, 10 men and 10 women were sent over to take care of all the miscellaneous chores in the courtyard. These servants were originally dissatisfied with being transferred here to serve a new disciple. But when they entered the courtyard and sensed the surrounding environment, they were stunned for a moment before revealing looks of ecstasy. They knelt to the ground and bowed to Qin Yu. This sort of cultivation environment was considered outstanding even in the demonic path's holy land. Only protectors, demon sons, and elders could enjoy such a cultivation environment. They were only inferior slaves and didn't have the qualifications to serve Qin Yu. But they never imagined that they would be so lucky today. Qin Yu nodded and received them, not saying much. He had the assistant smile and told them that if they needed anything in the future, they could ask him. Duan-san and Duanji were a bit nervous. This was because of the 20 new slaves. There were many more outstanding people than them, whether it was in terms of cultivation or beauty. Luckily, Qin Yu's arrangements allowed them to feel more at ease. From now on, those 2 will be the leaders. Just listen to their orders. You may leave. Like this, the first day after entering the demonic path's holy land passed. Zhao Qianyuan had promised to come as a guest in the future, but he never imagined that he would come the next day. Dong Hanju also came with him. After learning the identities of the 2 people in front of them, the slaves who had been wondering just who their master was were suddenly shaken and filled with excitement. The competition within the demonic path was fierce, and it was important to follow their master. Perhaps in the future they would have a chance to leap over the dragon gate. Looking at it now, their new master was obviously an extremely thick thigh. They quickly and respectfully welcomed the 2 people in. Then someone ran off to report. When Qin Yu received Duan-san, report, surprise flashed in his eyes, and he immediately stood up. Zhao Qianyuan calmly smiled. I spoke to him yesterday, and he insisted on coming today. I didn't think there was anything else, so I agreed. This could be considered an explanation. Dong Hanju was straightforward. I want to know just how strong you are. Qin Yu waved his hand. There will be a chance in the future. I don't want to fight right now. Dong Hanju frowned. He was interrupted by Zhao Qianyuan. Right now, Brother Yao isn't in a good position to fight with you. Dong Hanju thought for a moment and slowly nodded. His bright eyes became tranquil once more. He swept his eyes over Qin Yu's residence, a bit dispirited. This fellow, so he came here to fight. Qin Yu looked at Zhao Qianyuan. There seemed to be a deeper meaning to his words just now. He ordered Duan-san to prepare a banquet and then led the 2 into the main hall. As Qin Yu's assistant heard that Zhao Qianyuan and Dong Hanju had come to pay a visit, he immediately sent a message to Protector Xan. Protector Xan had been worrying about how he had missed the chance to befriend Zhao Qianyuan yesterday and express his goodwill to Qinyu. He was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly ordered people to prepare a superior banquet and then chose a jar of wine from his collection to personally deliver it. The assistant stopped him. "Protector, Yao Bin and the other two are clearly old acquaintances. Since they have reunited today, they will naturally reminisce about old times. If you rush over now, I fear you won't be welcomed." He looked at Protector Xian's complexion. "Protector Xian, you only need to pass on some goodwill today. There will be plenty of chances to get closer in the future." Protector Xian nodded. "You're right." He thought of something else. There seemed to be someone in the sect who wanted to deal with Yao Bin. He investigated a bit, but didn't find anything. It could be seen that the one who did this was absolutely of a higher rank than him. In this sort of situation, expressing a bit of goodwill and waiting for the situation to become clearer was indeed the best choice. After thanking Protector Xian, Qinyu opened the jar of wine and poured wine for the two. He raised his cup and said, "Thank you for coming today." He was well aware that with Zhao, Qianyuan, and Dong Hanju here today, no one would dare to casually look down on him in the future. Yesterday, Zhao Qianyuan had appeared and even apologized in front of everyone. This was also because he wanted to support Qinyu. Qinyu was well aware of this and remembered it in his heart. Zhao Qianyuan raised his cup. In the Demon Ascension Gate's small world, there were some misunderstandings between us. Now that things have passed, how about we write them off? Dong Hanju solemnly nodded. He knew that they were speaking of the time when they had worked together to have him bear the monster race's bloodline curse. Qinyu smiled and said, "Let's not mention the past." The weak had no status. This was a particularly cruel point in the demonic path. In that situation, Qinyu had taken the initiative to deliver himself to their doorstep. His strength wasn't bad, so he was certainly the best choice. Since there were no irreconcilable contradictions between them, turning hostility into friendship in the current situation was the wisest choice. If this sort of person really wanted to take revenge for the smallest grievance, then even if they were happy for a moment, they wouldn't be able to go far. In this world, having one more friend was always better than one more enemy. Moreover, Zhao Qianyuan and Dong Hanju were both peak-proud children of heaven. In the future, they were destined to become great figures of the demonic path. Zhao Qianyuan smiled. The corners of Dong Hanju's lips also relaxed a bit. In truth, everyone's thoughts were similar. Zhao Qianyuan drained his cup and placed it down. He said, "All new demonic path disciples will undergo an extremely important test." He paused for a moment, a solemn look in his eyes. "Does Brother Yao know what this test is for?" A bolt of lightning flashed through Qinyu's mind. "Demon body?" Zhao Qianyuan nodded. "That's right, it is the demon body. Before this, I stopped Brother Dong from fighting with you because of this. Brother Yao, you must take this test seriously and enter it in your best condition. Trust me, this is extremely important." Dong Hanju said, "The demon body is the most important part of the demonic path's cultivation methods. Soon, the great supernatural powers of the demonic path can only be displayed with the demon body. Moreover, the most important point is that the seat of the Holy Palace is currently vacant. As long as the demon body enters the highest saint rank, they can directly take over and become the master of the Holy Palace." His eyes blazed with heat. Although the master of the Holy Palace is only a nominal leader, he has the authority to control the entire demonic path. Between the heavens and earth, he is a supreme existence. It isn't just you and me. In theory, all demonic path disciples have this chance. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time he had learned of the great secret hidden within the demon body. It was no wonder that Yu Qi had brought him back to the land of divinity and demons because he had cultivated the demon body. The banquet didn't continue for too long. After sending off Zhao Qianyuan and Dong Hanju, Qin Yu suddenly took a deep breath, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Could he try for the position of master of the demonic path? As soon as this thought appeared, it wildly swelled. If he succeeded. Chapter 5:27. The demonic path placed great importance on the demon body cultivation talent of new disciples, especially in the current situation where the seat of the Holy Palace was vacant. 2 days after Qin Yu received Zhao Qianyuan and Dong Hanju's reminder, he received news from the External Affairs Division that he would be undergoing the examination tomorrow. The examination process seemed quite complex and required the aid of a special environment. All new disciples that needed to undergo the examination had to arrive on a large speed car at a set time. Qin, you didn't have the bad habit of putting on airs as a master and appearing at the end. This was especially true after he confirmed how important today's examination was to him. There was still an hour before the scheduled time, so he arrived at the foot of the mountain early. After verifying his identity, he boarded the speed car. It was clear that he wasn't the only one who was interested in today's demon body talent examination. There were already many people sitting on the speed car. As they saw Qin Yu arrive, their complexions changed and the atmosphere became a bit tense. On the first day, although no one jumped out to make things difficult for Qin Yu besides Gong Zhen, everyone didn't get along well with him. Qin Yu's expression was light. He only glanced around before looking away. He casually chose an empty seat and sat down, closing his eyes to rest. Time quietly passed. The number of new disciples boarding the speed car increased. But the seat next to Qin Yu was still empty. Not just that, but every disciple that passed by him would subconsciously hold their breath and quicken their steps, as if they felt uncomfortable just being near him. Qin Yu was happy to enjoy the peace and quiet. Then a loud voice sounded out in his ears. The demon body cultivation focuses on blood vitality. Young people have a burning blood vitality, and the earlier they start cultivating, the more likely they are to succeed. If they are too old, I fear they will only achieve half the results with twice the effort. It was Gong Zhen. This fellow that he had slapped in the face with his words was still as loathsome as ever. He didn't seem to have learned at all. Actions were always more powerful than words. This saying was indeed true. Qin Yu decided that once he stabilized his footing, he would make this fellow regret his actions. Senior apprentice Brother Gong is right. Today, another person jumped out. In my opinion, some people should honestly stay in their residences and cultivate. If they go to take the examination with us youths, they will only be humiliating themselves. After all, what we're looking at today is cultivation talent, not cultivation. The third person to speak was actually a woman. She covered her mouth and smiled, her charm overflowing. Senior apprentice Brother Gong, junior apprentice Brother Bao, please don't speak like that. Otherwise, he might become angry out of shame and attack us. The three of us are too young and aren't his match. Moreover, shouldn't we respect our elders? This woman spoke very politely, but she kept calling him old mister and respecting the elderly. Her mouth was really crafty. Qin Yu was immediately amused. Although he couldn't deal with them right now, he was prepared to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Bringing them along wasn't a bad idea either. So when he opened his eyes, he saw 2 men and a woman in front of him. Luckily, the demonic path's large speed car was very spacious, allowing the 3 of them to stand in the aisle. Facing Qin Yu's eyes, the corners of the 3 people's faces were filled with ridicule and provocation. They were clearly telling him that they had come for him. So what could he do about it? Qin Yu took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He said in a low voice, "What use is there in arguing? Facts speak louder than words." Gong Zhen's lungs nearly exploded with anger. "Now you know how to use the word talk? Yesterday, when you were insulting me, I didn't see you having such a high level of awareness. But the more he acted like this, the more it showed that this surname Yao was angry. In Gong Zhen's opinion, not only was he venting his anger, but he had also made great progress. Thinking about it, his anger disappeared. He raised his eyebrows and sent a message. "Come on, you bastard. Hurry up and hit me." Aren't you a badass? The speed car was silent. In truth, no one was stupid. If Gong Zhen and the others kept provoking Qinyu again and again, there must be a story behind this. Because news of the demon blood crystal was too important, the high-level figures of the demonic path had issued a gag order. Thus, it hadn't spread out. Some people knew about Heavenly Demon City's Qi family, but some people thought that the Qi family didn't have the ability to do so. But was the reason really important? Everyone looked at Qinyu, waiting to see how he would respond. But most people believed that he would choose to ignore them like before. In fact, this was indeed the best way to deal with the current situation. Although it was a bit cowardly, it was better than being schemed against by others. But today's development was different from what everyone expected. Qinyu looked at the mocking faces of the several people. He clenched his teeth and said, "Do you dare to make a bet?" Gongzhen sneered. "What bet?" Qinyu said, "Let's use today's demon body talent test as a bet. If the test result is bad, then you have to agree to a condition that you won't cause any material harm." Bao Yihan's eyes brightened. "All right, let's make a bet." Gongzhen was annoyed that this brat had stolen all the merit. She hurriedly said, "Today, all the cultivators on the speed car can testify for us. If you go back on your word, don't blame us for being rude." The female cultivator smiled. "Senior apprentice brother Yao, count me in." He was just an old thing. No matter how tyrannical his strength was, his blood vitality was old, and he didn't even have the qualifications to cultivate the demon body. As for the condition that he wouldn't cause any material harm, as long as she used it carefully, it would be more than enough to complete the mission. She certainly couldn't miss out on such a chance to earn merit. The three of them appeared calm on the surface, but they were inwardly pleasantly surprised. They never thought that the impenetrable and slippery Yao Bin would actually jump out on his own initiative today. As they thought of the rewards they might obtain after completing the mission, their hearts began to heat up. As for whether or not they would lose, that was impossible. It had to be known that there were three of them. As long as one of them defeated Yao Bin, then he would be finished. Moreover, these three didn't believe that they would lose to an old fellow whose blood vitality was so old and frail. Qinyu coldly snorted and closed his eyes. His ears finally quieted down. He faintly smiled and began to think about how he would play after this. Although he didn't know what the demonic path's testing method was, Qinyu's demon body had risen to the sovereign level, and he was confident in his own cultivation talent. Even if he couldn't do anything this time, he would still teach them an unforgettable lesson. He would also warn everyone that his temper wasn't too good, so it was best not to provoke him. The speed car was extremely fast. Even so, it took them nearly 6 hours to arrive at the testing area. Gong Zhen, Bao Yihan, and the female cultivator sneered as they got off the speed car first. Qinyu didn't join the crowd. Instead, he waited for most of the people to arrive before he stood up and left the speed car. What entered their eyes was a massive crater. However, this volcano seemed to have been dormant for many years. At the edges of the crater, there were many traces of magma solidifying. One could imagine that countless years ago, this dark and cold mouth had once recklessly spewed out destructive strength. Outside the crater, there were already many people waiting. The ones responsible for guarding the crater were the true demon guards. This was within everyone's expectations. Since the demon body was related to the throne of the Holy Palace, it was natural for the true demon guards to come. 3 black-robed old men with indifferent expressions appeared. They were clearly the leaders of the crowd. Their cold eyes swept over everyone, and they waved their hands. "Begin." It seemed as if they weren't interested. One couldn't blame them for being indifferent. The quality of this batch of disciples was simply too poor. Moreover, they had already been confirmed. If it weren't for the rules, they wouldn't have bothered wasting time here. Since this was the case, they had to hurry. The sooner they passed the formalities, the sooner everyone could return. The crater in front of you is where the test will take place. Listen to my orders. Restrain all of your strength and jump in. Remember, no matter what you feel in the crater, do not use your strength to resist it. Otherwise, don't blame me for not reminding you. After a sacred palace cultivator finished speaking, he winked and the true demon guards guarding the crater retreated like a receding tide. Jump! No one hesitated. There were nearly 2,000 new disciples. Even if some of them were anxious, none of them dared to hesitate at this time. The pitch-black and icy crater swallowed up everyone that fell down like dumplings, like the maw of a giant monster. When it was Chin-Yu's turn, he jumped down. His field of vision was quickly covered by darkness. Then he felt his surroundings fall silent. His divine sense was suppressed by an invisible strength, unable to reach out. But after carefully listening for a long time, he could hear the absolute silence around him. This allowed Chin-Yu to determine that he was alone. What about the cultivators that jumped down with him? Chin-Yu didn't know where they had gone. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Could it be that today's test had been tampered with and someone wanted to deal with him? But in this sort of grand occasion where the Holy Palace was leading, who would be so fierce? Wouldn't they have some scruples? As Chin-Yu was lost in thought, his body was suddenly wrapped up by a gentle strength. Then his rapidly sinking body began to slow down. Like a falling feather, he swayed for a moment before finally floating in the air. Chin-Yu tried moving his hands and feet. This strength seemed to be entrusted to him and didn't have any intention of imprisoning him. He carefully sensed that there was no uneasy aura around him. Chin-Yu relaxed a little. It seemed that in this situation, someone wasn't trying to harm him. Suddenly, Chin-Yu keenly felt a trace of a cool aura appear from nothingness, drilling into his body through his pores. It slowly wriggled, starting from the surface of his skin and slowly penetrating deep into his flesh and blood. What followed was an unbearable numbing feeling, like countless ants were crawling in his heart. This feeling was extremely uncomfortable. It wasn't as fierce and painful as it was fierce and painful. Rather, it was warm, soft, and difficult to resist. Thinking of the Holy Palace cultivator's warning just now, Chin-Yu clenched his teeth and allowed this cool aura to penetrate into his body. Luckily, his will had always been firm and he had experienced many tempering experiences, so his thoughts remained calm. At this moment, Chin-Yu was suddenly enlightened. Perhaps the standard to measure the talent of a demon body was the amount of cool aura one's body could absorb. With this thought in mind, he controlled his body to relax even more. He didn't defend himself at all, allowing the cool aura to explore deeper into his body. Time slowly passed. Although the numbness and itchiness were unbearable, Chin-Yu believed he could still withstand it. Originally, everything was normal. But when the first wisp of cool aura touched the demon blood crystal stored in Chin-Yu's body, it was like a spark falling into a boundless sea of oil. Bang! Terrifying flames instantly erupted. The burning sensation caused Chin-Yu to deeply understand what it meant to be in so much pain that he wished he were dead. Luckily, what was burning wasn't the demon blood crystal, but the cool aura that broke into his body. Or, it was more accurate to say that it was the product of the cool aura fusing with the demon blood crystal. When the cool aura was exhausted, the flames extinguished with it. Chin-Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. Just as he was rejoicing that he had just survived a calamity, his eyes widened, filled with shock and anger. The cool aura that seeped into his body was like a shark that smelled blood. After a brief pause, it desperately rushed towards the demon blood crystal. At the same time, the speed at which the cool aura outside entered his body suddenly rose by dozens of times. Even with Chin-Yu's calm state of mind, he was so frightened that his soul nearly left his body. Just a wisp of cool aura had caused him to experience pain that broke through his limits. Now that he rushed over like a hive of bees, he might even ignite all the demon blood crystals at the same time. At that time, even if he didn't burn to death, he would still die from the pain. Chin-Yu had already thrown all thoughts of resisting to the back of his mind. His little life would soon be forfeit, so who cared what the consequences were? But just as he thought of resisting, before he could erupt his strength, his entire body stiffened. The cool aura that flowed into his body suddenly turned into an invisible cage that nailed him to the ground. Bang! What a vast expanse of brilliant flames. It was like the most gorgeous fireworks in the world, tumbling and spinning, weaving together into a beautiful picture. Unfortunately, this was happening within Qin Yu's body, so it was destined that no one would be able to see it. He could only appreciate it for himself. And what was even more unfortunate was that Qin Yu was thinking about how he hadn't died yet. He simply didn't have any thoughts of appreciating it. What a pity! Outside the mouth of the volcano, as all the new disciples jumped in, space began to rapidly fluctuate. Then, as these fluctuations spread out, countless overlapping spaces appeared. If one looked carefully at each overlapping space, they would see the same dark nothingness. But soon they began to change. Countless points of weak light gushed out from this darkness, constantly wriggling and growing. Some of them soon turned into candlelight that continued to grow brighter. Of course, a large portion of the dark nothingness didn't change after the flames reached the candlelight level. Although they didn't have much hope for these new disciples, as the 3 Holy Palace elders in charge of today's examination saw this, their lips couldn't help but twitch. Let alone discovering talents, the performance of these people was simply a waste of precious materials, a waste of resources. It had to be known that a single examination consumed a considerable amount of resources. As the 3 Holy Palace elders thought about how nearly 2,000 people had been examined today, they nearly grasped their hearts. This time they had really suffered a great loss. After the candlelight level was the bonfire level. Of the nearly 2,000 new disciples, only a few dozen had reached this level. The only thing that comforted the 3 Holy Palace elders was that although most of these people had stopped growing, there were still 7 dark spaces where the flames were continuing to rise. After the bonfire level was the star level. This was already considered a passing grade. As long as one diligently cultivated, there was a chance that they would be able to enter the next level of the demon body. But this was only a hope. The chances of success were 20 to 30%. Of the 7 dark spaces, 2 of them ultimately failed to make a breakthrough. Although the flames were much more vibrant, they still hadn't reached the level of condensing into stars. A moment later, 5 stars appeared in the darkness. Although they were all dim, for better or worse they were still small fish. Today wasn't without harvests. The 3 Holy Palace elders let out a breath of relief. For better or worse, as long as they had a bit of face, they wouldn't ask for anything more. But a pleasant surprise often occurred when there was no longer any hope. In the dark spaces, the 5 stars began to simultaneously brighten once more. The 3 Holy Palace elders were startled for a moment before revealing a happy expression. After the star level was the crescent moon level. A disciple with this level of talent would have a 90% chance of entering the next level of the demon body. They might even be able to reach an even higher level. However, they didn't have too much hope. Although the perception of a star and crescent moon seemed to be only one level, there was an essential difference. The first star stopped brightening, then the second, and then the third. Only 2 dark spaces continued to brighten. They were like true stars in the winter night sky, becoming extremely dazzling. The crescent moon wasn't far away. The volcano was quiet. Everyone, including the 3 Holy Palace elders, subconsciously held their breath. Stepping into the crescent moon realm meant that the demon body was within reach. This was the crossroads of their destiny. Whether they would fade into the crowd or soar into the heavens, all of this depended on this moment. Even if this didn't concern them, they still felt nervous. Many people clenched their fists and gulped. Suddenly, one of the stars trembled, as if it wanted to expand and erupt. But after several attempts, it was unable to take that critical step. The 3 Holy Palace elders sighed. Sure enough, this star soon fell silent, no longer changing. At this point, there was only 1 star-level star left. It continued to brighten and continued to brighten. In the silence, the flow of time seemed to slow down. After an unknown period of time, the star suddenly trembled. The transformation had begun. The star just now was stuck at this step. If it couldn't make a breakthrough, then everything before would have been in vain. Perhaps it was only a breath of time, or perhaps even shorter, but the trembling star suddenly shined with a brilliant light. When the light faded away, a crescent moon quietly appeared in the dark space. It was extremely small, like a newly sprouted willow. It gave off a feeling of extreme fragility, as if it could break with just the slightest bit of force. But no matter how small it was, a crescent moon was still a crescent moon. This was an essential difference. A holy palace elder stroked his beard and smiled. His eyes revealed true gratification. He had finally gained something. The demon body was originally one of the most difficult supernatural powers to cultivate in the world. It represented the unsurpassed body tempering method of the demonic path. If one had a crescent moon talent, then as long as they diligently cultivated, they would have a chance of touching upon the emperor level. This could already be considered a great harvest. After all, in the current holy palace, the highest rank of the demon body was only the emperor level. This unexpected surprise wasn't wasted. The materials that the disciples worked so hard to gather haven't been wasted. Call this crescent moon disciple over. In the future, his cultivation will be conducted in the holy palace. Another holy palace elder said with a smile. The third elder's eyes flashed. Up until now, I have not had a single outstanding disciple. I hope that the two of you can help me. The smiling elder immediately stopped smiling. You don't have a disciple you're proud of, but do you think I have one? There is no room for discussion. The second elder coughed several times. The three of us are responsible for today's assessment. According to the rules, we all have the qualifications to accept disciples. Since that's the case, let this junior choose for himself. He seemed to be filled with confidence. The three of them looked at each other. Saber light flashed and sword shadows flashed. Then, with a light snort, they didn't say anything. They were all thinking about what conditions this crescent moon disciple would bring out to move him. But what happened next caused the three of them to forget about their careful plans. The holy palace elders who boasted of themselves as calm and collected suddenly widened their eyes. This was because the crescent moon was brightening. Although the brightness was small, it was very steady. There was a strange charm to it, like flowers blooming in spring. Chapter 5:28. Moonstep martial artists already had the qualifications to attack the Emperor realm. It was just that, depending on the grade, the chances of success varied. For instance, at the Crescent Moon realm, the Crescent Moon was like a willow, thin as a hook. The chances of stepping into the Emperor realm were no more than 20%. But this Crescent Moon in front of them only stabilized a little. Then, like a bamboo shoot breaking out of the ground, it stretched and grew, becoming increasingly plump. Before long, the willow bud became a semicircle, as if it had been cut in half by a sword. It was clean and dazzling. Half Moon realm. At this level, the chances of reaching the Emperor realm were at least 30%. A 30% chance was already amazing. At this time, all of the Holy Palace elders that had their eyes glued to this half moon were short of breath. From Crescent Moon to half moon, although there was no essential difference, it represented that the potential of this moon-step disciple had suddenly doubled, or even more. They hadn't had much hope for today's test, but looking at it now, it was as if a shining little golden man had been dug out from the sand. If they could receive this moon-step disciple as a disciple, then passing on their legacy wouldn't be a problem at all. In the future, they might even have a chance to carry forward their respective inheritances. This was no longer a simple disciple, but a hope for the future. As long as they could win him over, let alone shedding all pretense of cordiality, it was worth it, even if they were beaten until they bled. However, before the sacred palace elders, who had a fierce look in their eyes, could say anything, they subconsciously widened their eyes in shock. They suddenly discovered that what had been dug out from the sand wasn't a little golden man, but a mountain of gold that made their hearts tremble. The half-moon was still brightening. Moonstep's 3 boundaries: crescent moon, half-moon, full moon. Full moon was the strongest of the moonstep, although it wasn't a 100% chance of reaching the Emperor realm. As long as it wasn't too bad, the chances were at least 70%. And most importantly, the full moon realm talent had a chance of attacking the Emperor realm. Even if the chances of success were less than 5%, as long as there was hope, it was more than enough for the Holy Palace to pay great attention and cultivate them. Emperor realm, in the current Holy Palace, there were only a few old monsters that had gone into life or death seclusion for many years that might have reached this boundary. In the demonic path, although there weren't many sovereign-level demon bodies, there were still dozens of them that could be found. Yet it had been many years since anyone had successfully broken through to the Emperor realm. If they could nurture an Emperor-level existence. As soon as this thought appeared in their minds, the 3 Holy Palace elders trembled, like sieves from excitement. The half-moon extended outwards, and strands of light constantly surged out, making it more and more rounded. This process wasn't fast, but it felt very stable. At the mouth of the volcano, in the silence, countless widened eyes of the masters simultaneously had the same thought. He could succeed. Then, the half-moon truly became complete. It was like an enormous disk scattering down its own brilliance. Even though they were already mentally prepared, when they truly saw this scene, they could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Full moon tier. This was the full moon tier. It was said that amongst the descendants of the previous Holy Lord, there was a genius that had appeared. His demon body talent had only just reached this level. He was regarded as the hope of his family's resurgence and was highly valued by the entire Holy Palace. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that such a prodigy would actually appear among this batch of rotten new disciples. As long as he didn't die along the way, this new disciple would have the throne in his hands, and he would be able to become an emperor. His future was limitless. From the start, he had already left all his peers far behind him. Some people couldn't help but envy him. Perhaps some people were jealous, but they didn't dare to show it too clearly. If they provoked this person, wouldn't that just be asking for trouble? Deep down, everyone wanted to know who this new, future big shot was. Just who was he? A full moon tear isn't considered a great figure. Brother, just what is in your head? Pour it out and change it. Within the demonic path, there had always been a restlessness that was difficult to detect. The source of this restlessness was the empty Holy Palace. This was because the Holy Palace Master was not only the nominal leader of the demonic path, but he was also an indispensable and transcendent existence of the demonic path, a peak combat strength that suppressed all directions. The Holy Palace Master's vacancy seemed fine on the surface, and the demonic path was still strong and stable. But once a major accident occurred, it was likely that a series of changes would occur. From top to bottom, the demonic path desperately hoped for a new Holy Lord to be born as soon as possible. Of course, who the new Holy Lord was and whose interests they represented were new problems that involved extremely dangerous struggles. It was because of this that when the demon envoy first discovered this, he didn't dare to speak of it. He even had to carefully look for another excuse to contact Chinyu. There was no need to elaborate too much here. In short, there was one point that the demonic path placed an incomparably high value on demon body talent. Imperceptibly, all demonic path cultivators would look up to those with superior demon body talent. The demonic path cultivators that were already shocked, envious, and incredulous enough suddenly discovered after a moment of silence that they could be even more shocked, envious, and incredulous. This was because in the dark space, the only full moon had suddenly fallen. Without any warning, it was inconceivably fast. Countless people widened their eyes, their minds falling into chaos. They felt as if they had heard information related to this scene before. In the end, the Holy Palace elders had stronger minds. Moreover, with their status, they knew much more. Moon fall. The Holy Palace elder who first spoke up and tried to play the sympathy card and accept a disciple suddenly screamed out loud. Although the two beside him didn't speak, the twitching of their lips and eyebrows was enough to show just how agitated they were right now. As the countless confused demonic path cultivators heard these words, it was like a bolt of thunder had fallen from the heavens, splitting them in half. They suddenly recalled some information they had heard about the incomplete demon body. One of them was star condensation, gathering moon, moonfall, sunrise. Now that the moon had fallen, could the sun rise smoothly? If it could, then wouldn't that mean that after tens of thousands of years, the demonic path would finally have a holy demon son with a sun-stepped demon body? Demon Son was a title that all demon body cultivators obtained after reaching the king level. It represented their status as a direct descendant of the demonic path. As for the Holy Demon Son, it had nothing to do with one's cultivation realm. It only looked at one's talent. As long as one had a sun-step talent, they could obtain a title. Their status was far above that of a demon son. In theory, they were ranked even higher than elders and protectors. Unfortunately, there were very few of them. Even if one looked through the ancient texts of the demonic path, they could be counted on one hand. But without exception, all holy demon sons became incomparably dazzling existences of their era. Of course, not all of them were able to smoothly grow. But as long as they didn't die, they would have a place in the entire land of divinity and demons. Could it be that today they would witness the birth of a holy demon son? The three Holy Palace elders fell silent. This was because they suddenly discovered that after completing moonfall, regardless of whether or not this new disciple could ascend, the talent he displayed was enough to arouse the attention of a great figure of the demonic path. He was no longer someone they could take in as a disciple. They waited in silence. The air seemed to freeze, and all the demonic path cultivators stopped breathing. In this stifling silence, a 10th sun quietly appeared in the skies of the Holy Land's small world. Strictly speaking, it wasn't complete. There was only the outline of a single sun, as if it were a scene of a total solar eclipse. Holy Palace. Beneath the Bodhi tree, a great bell that had been silent for countless years suddenly began to ring. A grand sound spread out, triggering some sort of resonance. In the next moment, the entire Holy Land's small world was filled with a dense fog of heaven and earth spiritual strength. Rumble, rumble, a loud roar swept out in all directions like great waves. Sunstep first boundary, Shadow Sunday. The sun was like a shadow, ethereal and illusory. But no matter how ethereal it was, no matter how illusory it was still a sunstep. Star gathering, moonfall, sun rising. The latter part was sun rising, bell ringing, world shaking, welcoming the new Lord. When the demon envoy arrived, everyone at the mouth of the volcano still hadn't regained their composure. He wasn't in the mood to care about these people's rudeness. He closed his eyes and sensed with rapt attention. Although the demon body talent test was extremely strict, as one of the Holy Palace's demon envoys, he cultivated a secret technique of the Holy Palace and was able to sense the internal energy. He opened his eyes. Although he was pleasantly surprised, there was also a bit of worry that he couldn't suppress. It really was Yao Bin. Before, the demon envoy only had a 40 to 50% chance of success. But after today's events, he was certain that Yao Bin was the person he had been waiting for. This should have been a good thing. But the commotion that Yao Bin caused today was far too great. So great that even he had no way to cover it up. Sweeping his eyes around, he saw that all the powerhouses of the previous Holy Lord's descendant tribe had arrived. All of them had gloomy expressions, and a cold light shined in their eyes. As he thought about the full moon realm genius that appeared not too long ago in the descendant tribe of the previous Holy Lord, the demon envoy felt an even greater headache. But a headache was just a headache. Since he had confirmed that Qin Yu was the person he had been waiting for, the demon envoy wouldn't allow anyone to harm him. Figure after figure appeared above the mouth of the volcano. They all maintained a distance from the overlapping space in order to show their respect to the Holy Palace. But this didn't stop them from using their own methods to probe the new disciple within the overlapping space that had caused today's phenomenon. Soon, these great figures of the demonic path revealed looks of surprise. They were blocked by the distorted space so that they couldn't be seen by the outside world. It was actually him. After a brief moment of thought, some people frowned, some people sneered, and some people's eyes shined with a divine light. Above the mouth of the volcano, the overlapping space violently trembled, as if some formidable strength was erupting from within, surpassing the limits of what they could withstand. As a result, the overlapping spaces began to collapse, banishing the newly matriculated disciples within them to the outside world. The originally empty mouth of the volcano was suddenly overcrowded. After a brief daze, they seemed to sense something. They looked up into the skies and saw the newly born 10th sun, their mouths slowly opening. Qin Yu felt as if he had already wandered through the 18 layers of hell several hundred times. Even though his will was firm and he was powerful, he still thought of death more than once. Unfortunately, he couldn't die. Although it was like 100 volcanoes had ignited within his body, there was still a strength that protected his mortal body. His soul curled up into a ball, and his consciousness reached the limit of collapse countless times. Every time this happened, a cool feeling would pour in, causing his blurry consciousness to wake up. After struggling in pain for an unknown period of time, Qin Yu suddenly had a flash of enlightenment. Perhaps he really wouldn't die today. Since he wouldn't die, what sort of pain would it bring him? Chapter 5:29. The 10 suns in the skies reflected each other. In the entire demonic path, Holy Land, small world. Everyone looked up in shock, their eyes filled with disbelief. The moon fell, the sun rose, the bell rang, the heaven and earth shook, and the new master was welcomed. Most of the demonic path cultivators were shaken and didn't have time to think of anything. But for those that were paying close attention to this day, their hearts were surging like a sea. Divine light surged in Zhao Qinyuan's eyes as he stared at the 10th sun in the skies. He frowned for a moment before composing himself. He didn't reveal much shock. This was because he had already chosen his path. As long as he patiently walked it, Zhao Qinyuan was confident that his achievements would not be beneath anyone else's. After all, Don Hanju was not the only one who was born different. But he had to admit that Yao Bin's performance today had far exceeded his expectations. Sun-ranked, he already had the qualifications to touch upon the supreme saint seat. Even if the matters of the small world were sealed, after today he would still become a peerless, proud son of heaven of the demonic path whose name would spread throughout the world. But at the same time, this reputation would bring him a lot of trouble. Zhao Qinyuan smiled. He had personally experienced this sort of tempering before. The difference was that he had already left seclusion and Yao Bin had only just entered. I hope you're able to break through the darkness and completely liberate yourself. In this vast world, it's truly too lonely if you don't have a companion. As for the cause of today's phenomenon, was it Yao Bin? In Zhao Qinyuan's eyes, there was no doubt at all. He believed in his own eyes, and he believed in his own heart. There was another person who also firmly believed it to be Qin Yu. Dong Hanju pursed his lips tightly. His eyes dimmed slightly, but they soon burned with a raging flame. He was born with a great destiny and was destined to have unparalleled achievements. That was why he was arrogant and looked down on his peers. Zhao Qinyuan had taught him the first lesson and Qin Yu the second. Although the two of them hadn't fought yet, he couldn't lie to himself. This was absolutely a formidable existence, no weaker than Zhao Qinyuan. Similarly, it could thoroughly defeat him. But so what? He, Dong Hanju, was destined to shine in this glorious era, to dominate for 100,000 years. The competition between you and me has just begun. I will not be discouraged, but please do not be arrogant. One day, I will defeat all of you at your most glorious moment, in the luxurious courtyard, Sun Zifu let out a long breath. He knew that he no longer needed to hide and could let go of the guilt in his heart. After today, the momentum of Yao Bin's meteoric rise was already established. Even if there would be some trouble, it was enough for the Sun family to bet. The reward promised to him in the pocket dimension would soon arrive. As a member of the family, Sun Zifu was very confident in his judgment. He could only watch helplessly as the people around him climbed higher and higher. If he didn't want to look up to them forever, he would have to start working hard. These muddle-headed years had been filled with excitement and memories, but most of them had been wasted. Sun Zifu sighed with emotion. He turned around and walked towards the cultivation chamber. He was luckier than the average person. Because of his background, after wasting precious time, he still had a chance to make up for it. If it was destined that the sun and moon would shine together in the future, he would also become a shining star in the sky that could not be ignored. Even if he couldn't compete with the sun and moon, he still wanted to leave behind his own ripples in the river of time. No one was willing to be mediocre. Because of Qin Yu, the most dazzling figures of the demonic path's future had their fighting spirit aroused. While they were triumphantly advancing towards that magnificent future, he himself had encountered a great deal of trouble. The strange, cool strength that gushed out from the dark space seemed to be unable to withstand Qin Yu's terrifying swallowing power and began to gradually wither away. At the start, because the cool strength decreased, the raging volcanoes within his body began to cool down. This rapidly reduced the pain that Qin Yu had to bear. But soon, the joy in his heart turned into a deep fear. This was because he discovered that the strength that protected his body was also disappearing. The volcanoes cooled down, but they still burned. Moreover, it seemed as if they would continue burning for some time. Without the protection of his mortal body, Qin Yu silently calculated and discovered that he wouldn't be able to last until the volcanoes were extinguished. Soon, he would be burnt to a crisp from the inside out. The 10th sun in the skies gradually turned red. Faint traces of brilliant colors began to extend from the frame of the great sun, making it even more striking. The moon step had 3 boundaries, and the sun step was also divided into different levels. Shadow Sunday. The great sun was like a shadow, like a dream, like an illusion. It was red and dyed from the inside out until it was completely crimson. This was the red sun. But now, one could easily discover that the brilliant red that dyed the interior of the great sun was becoming less and less. Seeing this, a thought appeared in everyone's hearts. Today's unexpected drama was finally coming to an end. No one had the qualifications to mention the name of the previous Holy Lord, and the descendants he left behind didn't dare to blaspheme the Holy Lord. Thus, they removed half of the Lin character and called themselves the Mu clan. Now, the several authoritative figures of the Mu clan had ashen complexions. He muttered to himself, "Since you have surpassed my control and exposed yourself to the sunlight, I ask you to take out the strongest proof and tell them that you are the best choice. But no matter what, this road will not be easy to walk. Perhaps you will succeed, or perhaps you will fail. But I hope that you can turn back without regrets. So, please erupt with everything you have." Qin Yu really erupted. The shadow sun turned into a red sun. It steadily rose almost without pause. Then, at the center of this crimson-red sun that seemed to suppress the mind, as if it were looking straight at a boundless sea of blood, a spot of pure white appeared. Mu Xianglin's body swayed, and all the blood drained from his face. He pushed away the person supporting him, the chill in his eyes no longer concealed. The third boundary of the sun's step, white sun. There was a saying, "The white sun is the clear sky. Those who become the white sun can control the clear sky." The shadow sun had no hope of reaching the saint step. The red sun had a 10% chance of success, and the white sun had a 30% chance. This was already the strongest the demon body could display. He could actually become the White Sun. He dared to become the White Sun. How could he? At this moment, all of Mu Xianglin's original plans had fallen to nothing. This was because he was well aware that no one would help the Mu family again. This was the deterrence of the White Sun boundary. No one was willing to provoke a proud son of heaven of the demonic path that had a high chance of becoming the next Saint Monarch. But at the same time, the killing intent in Mu Xianglin's heart reached its peak. Without a new Saint Monarch, the Mu family would be the descendant of the Saint Monarch, enjoying all sorts of privileges and status. But once the Saint Monarch was born, all of this would vanish into thin air. The Mu family had been strong for these past years and had made countless enemies. If they lost the halo of being the descendant of the Saint Monarch, they would inevitably be greeted by countless wolves and tigers. He no longer had a path to retreat. If he didn't want his family to collapse and be uprooted by others, he could only continue onwards to the end. Only the descendants of the Mu family could become the Saint Monarch. Everyone else would die. When the red sun in the skies turned white, Qin Yu finally realized what he had obtained today. As he listened to the clear cracking sounds emitting from his body, he suddenly discovered that this red date was far, far too large. It was so large that he had an intense impulse to relive the pain he experienced today several more times. Chapter 530. The moment it transformed into pure white, there was no difference between the 10 suns in the skies. Then the skies of the Holy Land's small world seemed to be wiped away by an invisible hand. The clouds scattered, revealing a clear blue sky without the least bit of impurities. This was like a curtain decorated with 10 blazing suns. The 10 suns intersected, their halos overlapping, refracting and diffusing, making the scene in front of them seem a bit more dreamlike. At this time, outside the volcano, the demonic path cultivators were in a trance. A stirring feeling rose in their hearts, as if they were witnessing the birth of a legend. Then they couldn't help but think, just how far could the person who caused this world phenomenon reach in the future? No one could give an answer. Even the silent and lofty demonic path great figures had complex expressions in their eyes. What was common was that all of them revealed a thoughtful and cautious look. If the shadow sun didn't matter and the red sun only needed to be looked at, then the third realm White Sun had the qualifications to have these great figures pay attention to him. This was true attention. The holy demon sun with a White Sun boundary talent had an extremely high chance of becoming the demon monarch. Taking a step back, even if he couldn't smoothly enter the holy palace, he would still have extremely high achievements. Although this sort of potential needed time to slowly awaken, the future prospects were so bright that it was worth investing in. At the very least, he had to maintain a proper attitude and not provoke a powerful enemy in the future for himself. To be able to stand out amongst countless cultivators, to become a rock and become an influential figure of the demonic path. While not every one of them was an intelligent person, none of them were idiots. Today, Qin Yu had used his superb performance to earn a layer of protection for himself. He had flattened the road to the future beneath his feet a little. Those who should have witnessed had already witnessed it. The great figures began to leave. With their status, they were destined to be cautious before making any decision. Even if Qin Yu's talent was unparalleled, they still wouldn't easily place a bet. Since they didn't want to be involved in the dispute of the Holy Monarch position too early, leaving now was the best choice. Otherwise, once Qin Yu came out, how would they express their stance? The Mu clan members were the first to leave. Just like when they arrived, they didn't alarm too many people. But there were still many eyes that fell on their departing figures. There were some things that no one said, but everyone knew in their hearts that the Mu family was currently very powerful. If they wanted to continue growing stronger, they could only face difficulties head-on. Therefore, this was an unsolvable problem. Both sides had never met before and had no grudges against each other. However, from today onwards, they were destined to be each other's greatest enemies until one side gave up or died. The demon envoy sucked in a deep breath. He didn't leave with the crowd. As one of the few people with the highest status in the Holy Palace, it was natural for him to care about a peerless white sun boundary, proud son of heaven. However, the truth was that there was another worry in his heart that no one knew about. That was because the greatest explosive point of the day had yet to appear, and that was Qin Yu's demon body boundary. When they were at Heavenly Demon City, the demon attendant had found an excuse to go together with Yan Lu. Although they hadn't made any substantial contact, he could still feel Qin Yu's vigorous and potent blood energy fluctuations. Sovereign-level demon body. The reason the demon envoy was able to make such an accurate judgment was because he was an old sovereign-level existence and also had a calamity immortal realm, cultivation. It wasn't difficult for him to figure out Qin Yu's background. His original plan was to suppress Qin Yu for a period of time. Thus, he reached an agreement with all parties to seal up the events that occurred in the Demon Ascension Gate's small world. But changes always came faster. Today, Qin Yu had amazed the world with a single brilliant feat without waiting for the demon envoy to suppress him. He had already soared into the highest heavens, drawing the attention of all parties. The White Sun Boundary's talent was terrifying, but the difficulty of cultivating the demon body was equally astonishing. If one wanted to have any achievements, they would need to spend a massive amount of time. But what if others discovered that this White Sun Boundary disciple had already reached the sovereign-level demon body boundary before his talent was fully activated? The Mu family would be the first to go crazy. That's right, they would go crazy. This was because they no longer had enough time to patiently wait for the right time to hunt. The bloodline descendant of the previous holy monarch, even if he had lost half of his surname, still had an incomparably terrifying background and strength. Although he was the demon envoy of the Holy Palace, controlled half of the true demon guards, and was also a transcendent calamity immortal realm existence, he still didn't have absolute confidence that he could resist the crazy biting of the Mu family. But the demon envoy had no other choice. This world was fair. Qin Yu had obtained protection with his talent. While he had changed the standpoint of many people, he also had to bear these accompanying troubles. In the skies, the 10th sun gradually disappeared. The blue skies were once more intertwined with clouds and fog once more. The phenomenon ended. The final moment had finally arrived. The demon envoy had a calm expression, but his heart was already prepared to welcome any situation. Even if he had to shed all pretense of cordiality, even if he had to kill until the sun and moon lost all light, even if he had to break the internal balance of the demonic path, he still had to protect Qin Yu, no matter the cost. In the skies above the pitch-black volcano crater, the only dark space suddenly trembled several times before splitting open. A figure stepped out. As if the light outside was too bright, he raised a hand in front of him and subconsciously narrowed his eyes. As he swept his eyes around, he could see open mouths and round eyes, making one worry that they would explode in the next moment. Qin Yu had a light expression. This was because he had already expected all of this, and now it seemed that the result was even better than he expected. He originally only wanted to maintain a high profile so that he could obtain the attention of the demonic path, but he never imagined that there would be such a great surprise. Although he had experienced pain that outsiders couldn't imagine, compared to his harvests, it wasn't anything at all. He faintly smiled. At this time, Qin Yu seemed to sense something. He looked up and his eyes met with the demon envoy's. It's him. Qin Yu subconsciously tensed up but soon composed himself. He bowed. The demon envoy was expressionless. He deeply looked at him for a moment and then turned to leave. At this time his heart was like a sea, tumbling and tumbling. On that day at Dawnperch residence, the two sides had sat across from each other. He had laid down his wine cup and made a final probe of Qin Yu. The demon envoy confirmed that he wasn't mistaken, that boundless blood vitality fluctuations and the tyrannical aura that came from the same source meant that this was without a doubt the sovereign-level demon body. But now, When Qin Yu emerged from the dark space, the demon envoy discovered that there were no longer any fluctuations of the demon body's blood vitality on his body. There were only two possibilities. Either his demon body had been crippled, or he had risen to an even higher level, surpassing the range of his senses. The 10th sun in the skies had just faded away. If the demon body was crippled, then there was only one option left. Sovereign level. Even someone as powerful as the demon envoy couldn't help but groan in his mind. If he hadn't personally experienced it and seen it with his own eyes, he would have never believed it. But as he thought about Qin Yu's white sun boundary demon body talent, although all of this was astonishing, it could be explained. However, could cultivating the demon body at the white sun boundary really be so terrifying? The demon envoy didn't know. But there was one thing he was sure of, and that was that Qin Yu's chances of success had risen from 50 to at least 30%. This was because, in the eyes of outsiders, Qin Yu was a junior with a heaven-defying talent who had yet to cross the threshold of the demon body. This would give others the misconception that they still had plenty of time and that they didn't need to take risks, that they could wait for the best opportunity. But the truth was that Qin Yu had already reached the sovereign level and was just a step away from the Saint Lord realm. As long as he could reach the saint level, there would be no one that could stop him from ascending to the heavens and becoming the peak existence in this vast world. Besides the demon envoy, there were 3 other people. As they looked at Qin Yu, who walked out of the dark space, their minds blanked out. Although they had completed the test a long time ago, they had been in a constant state of shock. They simply didn't have the mind to observe their surroundings to determine just who this heaven-defying character was. Moreover, subconsciously, they didn't think that an old fellow that was several hundred years old could have such a performance. Gong Zhen's lips were deathly pale and his body shivered. His entire mind was drowned in regret. If the heavens could give him a chance to start over, he swore he would hide as far away as he could and never provoke Qin Yu again. But what this world lacked the most was medicine for regret. The river of time surged forwards and wouldn't stop or shift because of anyone's will. Of course, this might only be the theory of relativity. But Gong Zhen clearly wasn't someone with the qualifications to reverse time. So he could only feel the fear and despair in his heart. His body stiffened. When Qin Yu's eyes fell on him, it was like he had been ruthlessly whipped. Gong Zhen nearly jumped up from the ground, but in the next moment he lowered his head. "The 3 of you, the bet between us has come to a conclusion. You won't go back on your word, right?" 5 days had passed since the demon body test. The punishment that Qin Yu gave to Gong Zhen and the others was both merciful and cruel. He was merciful because the punishment was easy to complete with almost no difficulty at all. He was cruel because ever since that day, Gong Zhen and the others had vanished from sight, never to appear again. Many demonic path cultivators subconsciously shivered as they thought of Qin Yu's methods. Even if some people wanted to hug his thigh, they wouldn't dare to have any thoughts about him. This was because Qin Yu's punishment was to run around naked for an hour. Yes, that was exactly what it meant. Even if there was a woman among them, Qin Yu remained as cold as iron, without the least bit of sympathy in his eyes. It wasn't that Gong Zhen and the others didn't think of refusing, but there were countless witnesses to the bet, and Qin Yu's request didn't cross the bottom line. And more importantly, with Qin Yu's white sun boundary talent, how could they dare to refuse? He obediently took off his clothes and ran for an hour. It was necessary to lose face, but perhaps he could write off what had happened before. If they tore apart all pretense of cordiality, even if Qin Yu couldn't do anything to them for the time being, what would happen in the future? No one wanted to be remembered by Qin Yu. Even Calamity Immortals had scruples in their hearts, much less 3 newly ascended demonic path disciples. Gong Zhen was the first to agree. He tore off his robes and ran away. Bao Yihan was the second. As the smiling woman ran away, her tears fell onto the white baby on her chest. She cried like a weeping beauty, pitiful and miserable. In the demonic path, there might be people who ran around naked, but it was rare for 2 men and 1 woman to run around together. Moreover, because of the commotion Qin Yu caused, this place had attracted far too much attention. It was only natural that more people saw the scene. It was unknown how many demonic path cultivators widened their eyes, their eyebrows dancing with joy. Were the new disciples of today already so good at playing around? The naked running incident was still fermenting, but Qin Yu no longer paid any attention to it. The reason he used such a vicious method was to establish his prestige. If anyone wanted to deal with him, they had to make preparations ahead of time. Now that his goal had been achieved, he naturally tossed it to the back of his mind. Now, what Qin Yu was thinking about was who would come out to contact him first. Through Zhao Qinyuan's explanation, he was already well aware of the matter of White Sun boundary talent. At the same time, he had also received a vague reminder from Zhao Qinyuan. Qin Yu thought about it. Zhao Qinyuan's words shouldn't be wrong. Most of the high-level figures of the demonic path were focused on him. 5 days should be enough time for the various influences within the demonic path to reach a certain degree of compromise. Dragon Head Mountain, within the grand residence at the summit. Qin Yu's eyes flashed, an inexplicable light in them. However, the person who came to contact him didn't appear. Instead, another guest arrived outside the residence. Looking at Sun Zifu, who was welcomed in, Qin Yu's mind brightened. He lightly said, "Since you've come, sit down." Sun Zifu shook his head, an ashamed expression on his face. "I know that fellow Taoist Yao must be ridiculing me in your heart, but I am only one of the sons of the Sun family. Although I have some authority and status, I don't have the qualifications to make decisions for myself." He took out a storage ring. "The rewards that I promised fellow Taoist Yao are all inside. What's extra is the Sun family's apology. I hope fellow Taoist Yao can accept it." After speaking, Sun Zifu laid down the ring and walked away. After taking several steps, he stopped. Right now, many people are watching from the sidelines. The situation in the demonic path seems calm, but the truth is that there are turbulent waves within. Fellow Taoist Yao, you must be careful and think twice before you act. He had come and gone in a hurry. Compared to before, Sun Zifu seemed to have changed a little. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He took the storage ring. Demon body tempering pill. Qin Yu had heard of its name for a long time, but this was his first time seeing it. There were more than half the original amount. There were a total of 30 pills. The rest were all spirit stones. The Sun family didn't fail to live up to their reputation as the wealthiest family in the demonic path. Their wealth was astonishing. However, after Four Seasons City had used the pre-celestial wood to scheme against the immortal sect, Qin Yu had plenty of spirit stones in his hands. He glanced at them several times before putting them away, not caring too much about them. He took out a demon body tempering pill. Qin Yu focused his mind and didn't discover anything wrong with it. Then he carefully scraped off some powder and swallowed it. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with it, he swallowed the entire pill. A moment later, Qin Yu opened his eyes. There was a bit more color in them. The demon body tempering pill was truly a good thing. It could actually directly increase the boundary of the demon body. Unfortunately, the Emperor-level demon body was like a vast sea, and the strength of the demon body tempering pill was at most a small stream. To say that it was a drop in the bucket would be an exaggeration. It was most suitable for cultivators that had just started cultivating the demon body. It could allow them to achieve twice the results with half the effort and greatly increase their cultivation speed. Qin Yu shook his head. He looked at the remaining 29 pills and put them away. With his demon body's boundary, it was simply a waste to use pills to cultivate. However, Qin Yu couldn't blame the Sun family for their carelessness with their gifts. Moreover, they had already agreed to this beforehand. From what the outside world could see, he hadn't even crossed the threshold of demon body tempering pills yet, so giving them 30 demon body tempering pills was already more than enough. If there was a chance in the future, he would just trade them. 29 demon body tempering pills would have a high exchange value within the demonic path. The second day after Sun Zifu left, Qin Yu was finally able to wait. The first person to contact him wasn't some great figure, but their status wasn't low either. The left commander of the Holy Palace's true demon guard warmly said, "Fellow Taoist Yao Bin, I have come here on orders to inform you that from today onwards, you should pack your things and enter the endless sea to cultivate." Although he was calm and his tone was friendly, deep in his eyes there was confusion as well as a bit of sympathy. The endless sea, yes, that was indeed a good place to cultivate. But in the demonic path, there was no one willing to go there on their own initiative. With his white sun boundary talent and the title of Holy Demon Son, it was fine if he didn't succeed. But how did he end up being exiled? Left Commander Liu Xin couldn't figure this out. But just like his name suggested, he was a cautious person. He wouldn't blindly inquire about things that he shouldn't know. He cupped his hands together and bid his farewells. As for the following matters, there would naturally be someone else to handle them. Soon, news spread throughout Dragon Head Mountain. The new disciples who had been silent out of fear, but also couldn't help but feel envious and jealous, let out long breaths of relief. Most of them were secretly delighted. Indeed, the rumors were true. This surname Yao's talent was unparalleled, but he was still viewed as a threat by others. Being exiled to the endless sea was the best proof of this. If this surname Yao knew he would end up like this, would he regret that his performance in the test was too dazzling? Chapter 531. The throne of the Holy Palace was empty, and the main hall was completely sealed off. Unless a new holy monarch was born, no one could open it. Luckily, the demon attendant had his own inheritance. He was a subsidiary branch of the Holy Palace and could control a corner of the Holy Palace. Although it wasn't as grand and boundless as the main hall, it still had a vigorous aura that left one in awe. The surface of the dark hall was covered with countless shadow-like runes. They followed a specific rule, constantly swimming and weaving together. These shadow-like runes separated the entire hall from the outside world. No one was able to sense anything that occurred within. Thus, the demon attendant always liked to think about important matters here. This was because he was well aware of the current situation that the Holy Palace was facing. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause a massive shock. Of course, there was also another important reason. An old voice echoed out in the hall. Sending him into the endless sea may seem like exile on the surface, but that is actually the best choice right now. Otherwise, how long will you be able to defend him? This time, as long as we can buy enough time for him to grow up, we can consider ourselves to have one. The demon attendant respectfully said, "Teacher is right. If these words were heard by others, the entire demonic path would be shaken." This was because the demon attendant only had a single teacher, and that was the previous demon attendant. But according to the rules of the demonic path, the birth of a new demon attendant meant that the previous demon attendant had perished. This was something that had never been wrong in the demonic path for billions of years. But now it was clear that some accident had occurred. The demon attendant hesitated for a moment. "I am only worried that Yao Bin will be disheartened by this matter. Once his spirit and will are damaged, it will be impossible for his demon body to make a breakthrough." The old voice was calm. "Although I haven't seen him with my own eyes, as you said, he is an extremely outstanding young junior. He has his own thoughts and wits. Moreover, he was able to become an emperor at such a young age. His lucky chances and destiny are not something that you and I can imagine. The best choice we can make for him is that he will have to rely on himself for his future path." The demon attendant hesitated and nodded. The previous demon attendant reminded, "Although the endless sea is a forbidden land, we still have to guard against it." The demon attendant respectfully said, "Teacher, rest assured that I have already made arrangements. The endless sea was located deep within the demonic path's small world. The seawater was blue and clear, and the gentle sea breeze blew against it. carrying with it the unique smell of seawater. On the fine and clean beach, a seagull with white feathers, red beaks, and black claws spread its wings and flew gracefully in the air. Under the illumination of the 9 suns, the surface of the sea shimmered with light. It was a beautiful sight to behold. Just from the environment alone, this place could be considered beautiful and captivating. But in reality, this beautiful sea area was a burial ground. Since the sacred palace had existed since then, apart from the historical records of the missing sacred lord of the origin, all the sacred lords of the past had been buried here after they ascended to heaven. There were also many important figures of the sacred palace buried with the sacred tomb. Without permission, no one was allowed to approach the endless sea. Otherwise, it would be regarded as a great disrespect to the previous holy monarchs. No one could afford to bear such a crime. Thus, the speed car that sent Qin Yu off came to a stop in the distance. Everyone got off and respectfully bowed towards the sea. Qin Yu stood in the middle of everyone. He straightened his body and looked at the endless sea. His eyes flashed, revealing a bit of understanding. It seemed that in this internal struggle of the demonic path, the compromise was to protect their own people for the time being. Otherwise, he wouldn't be facing such a leisurely scene right now. As Qin Yu thought about the message that Zhao Qinyuan had sent him, he sighed inwardly. During the demon body talent test, he had caused an unexpected stir, but he had also fallen into a great deal of trouble. But he didn't regret it. Even if he had to do it all over again, he would still make the same choice. Moreover, this wasn't something that he could control to begin with. Fellow Taoist Yao Bin, we can only send you here. A true demon guard cupped his hands together and took out a jade box. Inside is the Holy Nether Guard Commander token and your appointment document. It will take effect immediately after you enter the Endless Sea. Please accept it. The Sacred Palace had always had 2 great armed forces. The True Demon Guard was one, and the Holy Nether Guard was the other. To a certain degree, the Holy Nether Guard was even stronger than the True Demon Guard. But that was only the situation recorded in the ancient texts. Ever since the previous Holy Monarch ascended to heaven, the throne had been vacant for over 100,000 years. The Holy Nether Guard had retreated to the Endless Sea, unable to leave without a Holy Spirit. In these long 100,000 years, the last powerful Holy Nether Guard had long since died. Now, there were only a few cats left. Moreover, as long as a new Holy Monarch didn't appear, the Holy Nether Guard could not leave the Endless Sea. Thus, being appointed as the commander of the Holy Nether Guard was a rather sad thing. Qin Yu could sense the pity and confusion in the guard's eyes. He calmly received the wooden box, nodded, and turned to leave. If he had been exiled to the Endless Sea before the demon body test, Qin Yu would have been extremely disappointed. He might have thought of all sorts of methods to escape from here. But now, all he had in his heart was calm. The Emperor level was only a step away from the Saint level. Once he smoothly stepped over it, Qin Yu could directly enter the sacred palace. Even the phrase reaching the heavens in a single bound wasn't enough to describe this. The reason he had displayed such a high profile was to obtain the attention of the great figures of the demonic path and use the massive cultivation resources of the demonic path to become stronger as soon as possible, becoming a truly influential figure. But now, Qin Yu had an even better choice. As long as his demon body broke into the saint level and he became the master of the sacred palace, he would instantly become one of the most honored people in the world. Why would he give up what was near and seek what was far away? Entering the Endless Sea might seem like he was being exiled, but he could actually obtain a stable environment where he could wholeheartedly cultivate. To Qin Yu, there were only advantages and no disadvantages. As for those mocking and sympathetic gazes, he didn't care what others thought, and time would prove everything. Looking at Qin Yu's back as he walked towards the Endless Sea, his steps calm and steady, his shoulders as steady as mountains, and thinking about how calm and indifferent he had been the entire time, the true demon guards responsible for delivering the box all revealed looks of admiration. not to mention anything else. Just this breadth of mind and bearing wasn't something they could compare with. He was truly worthy of being a formidable character with the demon body's white sun-boundary talent. The true demon guard that delivered the wooden box took a deep breath and suppressed his heart. He said in a low voice, "The mission has been completed. Let's go." Everyone boarded the speed car. With a low engine sound, they rapidly flew back the way they came, soon vanishing from sight. Thus, in this boundless world, looking all around, there was only Qin Yu's figure. Beneath the illumination of the 9 suns above his head, he silently walked forwards. His pace wasn't fast, but it was filled with firmness. Step by step, he arrived at the endless sea. As far as the eye could see, the waves, the sea breeze, the seagulls, and the white sandy beach beneath his feet formed a beautiful picture. Qin Yu's lips curved up, revealing a faint smile. It wasn't just because of the beautiful scenery in front of him, but also because of the extremely rich heaven and earth spiritual strength that surrounded him. Indeed, as Zhao Qianyuan had said, although the endless sea was a land of exiles, it was also the most suitable place to cultivate within the demonic path. If it weren't for the fact that one needed to join the Holy Nether Guard and couldn't take a single step without a Holy Nether Guard token, then the spots to enter would have already been fought over. Qin Yu took out the token that represented the commander of the Holy Nether Guard. As he entered the endless sea, this token began to emit light, indicating that the appointment had taken effect. But the beach was empty, without a single person to be seen. There were only several broken wooden boats that were chained to the pier, bobbing up and down with the waves. It seemed as if no one placed him in their eyes as a commander. Qin Yu shook his head. He walked over to the first wooden boat and looked down. The bottom of the boat was broken. He took several more steps forward and looked at the second boat. It was also broken. The third boat, the fourth boat, and then, well, if one included the pieces of wood chained to the ground, there were a total of 5 boats. They have a great amount of resentment, Qin Yu whispered to himself, but there wasn't much dissatisfaction on his face. They had a powerful cultivation, but they were trapped in a cemetery, dying in a depressed and unwilling state. After witnessing the fates of their ancestors, it was normal for the Holy Nether Guard to feel resentment in their hearts. On the other hand, if Qin Yu had come today and immediately received a warm welcome, he would have secretly wondered if these people were preparing to kill him to vent their anger. The wooden boats were all broken. Fine, that was nonsense. Then he might as well do something practical and repair it. The endless sea was a sea, but it wasn't just a sea. If Qin Yu wanted to truly enter it, he needed a key. These wooden boats were the key. He dismantled 3 wooden boats and nailed the planks together, barely managing to piece together a boat. Although it looked a bit ugly, it should be enough. Qin Yu stepped onto it. With a flick of his sleeves, the pieced-together wooden boat sailed deep into the endless sea. The wooden boat broke through the waves, emitting loud crashing sounds. Standing on the shore, after several breaths of time, the wooden boat had vanished from sight. At the bow of the boat, Qin Yu suddenly felt something. He looked back and saw that the shore had indeed disappeared. He was in the boundless sea, unable to see the end of it. The endless sea. Entering the sea was boundless, taking in the endless meaning of the world. Mottled runes began to appear on the wooden boat beneath him. Perhaps it was because it was broken and incomplete, but the runes on the surface of the boat were intermittent. It gave off a very unreliable feeling. Qin Yu looked down and subconsciously frowned. If he couldn't open the entrance to this boat, wouldn't that be troublesome for him? Thinking about it even more darkly, if those holy nether guards who inherited their father's legacy pretended not to know, just as Qin Yu thought he should do something, the wooden boat suddenly trembled. Then the water in front of him was parted by an invisible strength, revealing a waterway that led straight to the seabed. The wooden boat swooped down. Qin Yu relaxed a little. It seemed that although these people resented him, they didn't dare to do anything too extreme. But less than a breath of time after this thought appeared, he discovered that he had been too optimistic. Bang! The high walls of water on both sides suddenly broke apart. Two large fish rushed out, blue spikes jutting out from their mouths. Although he didn't know how strong these spikes were, he could see that they shined with a metallic halo on their surface. If they pierced his body, it definitely wouldn't feel good. From these two large fish, Qin, you could feel the aura of someone controlling them. Although these soul fluctuations were weak, they couldn't escape the senses of the cosmic Sea-Cross bell. Mimi mercilessly mocked. Qin, you really do have a halo of hatred around you. No matter where you go, there will always be people who find you unpleasant to the eye. Smelly brat, did you forget who it was that went to such great lengths to find food for you? To burn the bridge after crossing the river. This move was quite easy to play. Of course, mocking him was one thing, but she still had to make a move. Mimi considered herself a person with principles. Qin Yu's humanoid food detector was quite useful. The cosmic Sea-Cross bell lightly trembled. An invisible impact spread out, instantly shattering the soul control placed on the two large fish. The ferocious-looking fish came to a sudden stop. They looked around and were immediately frightened. They glanced at each other as if saying, "What the fuck? Why are we here?" They turned around and tore through the water walls, fleeing without a trace. Deep within the endless sea, there was a large city. The city was strict, and a harsh, killing aura soared into the heavens. At this time, in a large residence somewhere in the city, a group of young cultivators were gathered together. They were both men and women, and all of them had excited expressions. But at this time no one spoke. Even their breathing slowed down for fear that they would disturb the woman sitting cross-legged in the center. She wore a long blue dress, and her features were picturesque. Although she was clearly sitting here, she gave off a feeling as if she were one with the heavens and earth. No, she wasn't one with the heavens and earth. Rather, it was more accurate to say that this endless and beautiful sea was imprisoning them. Suddenly, the female cultivator trembled. She opened her eyes, and blood flowed out from the corners of her lips. The excited young men and women were all stunned at the same time. Then they revealed expressions of shock. They had never thought that this would be the result. In front of the crowd, a young man stepped forwards. He was of medium stature, but his aura was extremely strong. He frowned, causing one to feel a stabbing pain in their eyes. They hurriedly looked away. Lan, what happened? His voice was low and deep, containing a calmness that didn't match his youth. It made one feel uneasy. The slightly panicked crowd immediately quieted down. Hai Lan lowered her head, deep in thought. After several breaths of time, she said, "The person who came has a high soul cultivation. He almost instantly discovered me, and then tried to break the control." She lifted a hand and wiped the blood from the corners of her lips. "It was just a slight shock to my soul. There's no problem. I want to try again." As she spoke to hear, her eyes brightened. But in the end, Hai Lan didn't have a chance to attack again. Several dignified, middle-aged men pushed open the door and walked in. What nonsense! The reprimand was harsh, but the several middle-aged men felt a bit helpless. Unless they truly wanted to shed all pretense of cordiality, they could let this happen once, but they couldn't allow these juniors to attack a second time. The Holy Nether Guard guarding the endless sea was an iron law set down by the Holy Palace when it was first established. This rule was engraved deep into their bloodlines and could not be changed. This was their destiny from birth. They could harbor discontent in their hearts, but they absolutely could not rebel. Otherwise, none of them would be able to withstand the consequences. If it weren't for this, how could the once illustrious Holy Nether Guard be willing to spend 100,000 years after the Holy Monarch passed away, living in anger, despair, and unwillingness until the day of their death? All of you are to be confined. Without my permission, no one is allowed to leave. Hai Lan, Liang Shui, and the others respectfully bowed and left. The Holy Land has ignored us for 100,000 years, and now they've suddenly sent a Lord Commander. What do you think of this? Wait a moment. The result will naturally be known. Humph! He had best recognize reality. If he really thinks of himself as a commander and makes some outrageous request, I won't be polite. Chapter 532. After the large fish attacked, the waterway was smooth. This was a bit unexpected. It seemed that the holy Nether Guard didn't dare to go too far. Chenyu smiled, his eyes flashing. It was unknown what he was thinking. After around a quarter hour, the patchwork wooden ship came to a stop. What appeared in front of Chenyu was a city filled with soaring infernal energy. But what was different from the sea race capital city that Chenyu had visited in the past was that this city wasn't built at the bottom of the sea. Rather, it was suspended in the depths of the endless sea, supported by seawater. A great floating city. Chenyu revealed a look of praise. To build such a city in the unpredictable deep sea, the difficulty could be imagined. Moreover, what left him even more gratified was the awe-inspiring atmosphere that the entire city exuded. Even though they had been trapped in the endless sea for 100,000 years and countless people had died unwillingly, the Holy Nether Guard was still able to maintain this momentum. The reputation of the Holy Nether Guard was truly well-deserved. The Emperor-level demon body was only a step away from the saint level. This was something that made one's heart surge with excitement. But even if Chenyu successfully broke through to become a Saint Lord, he had no foundation in the demonic path, nor did he have any trusted aides. How much authority could he have as a Saint Lord? It was nothing more than a pleasing name and a dignified appearance. But this wasn't what Chenyu wanted. Thus, he had to possess his own strength in the demonic path. Being exiled to the endless sea and becoming a commander of the Holy Nether Guard was the best choice he could make. If he could subdue the Holy Nether Guard, Chenyu's heart skipped a beat before he composed himself. It was too early to consider these things. He had to walk this road step by step. At this time, the city gates opened from within. A massive number of Holy Nether Guards that were covered in armor similar to the true demon guards rushed out. The only difference was that their armor was bright red, as if it had been soaked in endless blood. A thick killing intent quietly spread out in all directions. In the distance, large numbers of fish were startled and fled, stirring up white splashes in the water. There were 4 figures in the lead. Some were tall, some were short, but each of them had an aura as condensed as a mountain. Their broad shoulders seemed as if they could lift up the moon and stars. Their eyes were ice cold, and they shot forwards like arrows. Chenyu's expression was calm. It was like what he was standing on wasn't a shabby wooden ship, but a supreme throne of power. His eyes were light. As he looked at the 4 people, a calm and unruffled aura poured out from him. There was silence, and the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. A formless pressure made it difficult for everyone to breathe. But the silence was finally broken. In the second left position, a blood-armored man who wasn't the tallest nor the shortest cupped his hands together. Holy Nether Guard Vice Commander Fu Shan greets the Lord Commander. The 3 people beside him and the many Holy Nether Guards behind them all bowed in unison. The scales on their armor began to crackle, as if great waves were rising from the seabed. Then the already astonishing killing intent suddenly soared, reaching a level that caused one's mind to tremble. In a trance, it was as if the big city floating at the bottom of the sea had turned into a horrifying beast that was imprisoned. It opened its mouth and roared at the sky. Chenyu's eyes paused for a moment before he revealed a smile. Although it wasn't too bright, it gave off a warm feeling of spring. As this infernal energy and killing intent rose up, many people across from him were stunned. They secretly thought that this boy had some skill. Thank you, Vice Commander and everyone, for waiting here for so long. I am truly sorry. Fu Shan stood up, his aura calm and unchanging. Lord Commander speaks too seriously. This is what we subordinates should do. Chenyu smiled and nodded. Everyone greets me. Behind Fu Shan, The 3 garrison generals furrowed their eyebrows. Why hadn't they mentioned a single word of what happened just now? Had they decided to temporarily endure it? Or did they have other plans? A person suddenly stepped forwards. This subordinate is 1st Garrison General Yuan Zhen. If I may be so bold as to ask Lord Commander, the Holy Palace has ignored us for 100,000 years. For them to suddenly send a commander here today, what instructions do they have? These words weren't polite, but it was a strategy they had already discussed. Since the new commander was shrouded in fog, they would take the initiative to attack. Of course, they had already prepared a follow-up response. No matter how the new commander responded, they would be able to control the situation. As for why they were so confident, it was simple. This was the endless sea, the place where their ancestors had lived and operated. Although they couldn't free themselves from their own destiny, a new commander couldn't shake or change anything. Qin Yu's smile didn't change. He shook his head. To tell the truth, I have no idea why I came here or why I became the commander of the Holy Nether Guard. This was the truth, so he spoke calmly. So, Garrison General Yuan Zhen's question, I really cannot answer it. Thinking about it, it's best to continue as before. Yuan Zhen was clearly stunned. It was clear that they had made all sorts of plans and made all sorts of preparations to be tough or soft. But they never imagined this would be the result. Based on what he said, it seemed like this new commander had been banished here, but as soon as this thought appeared, he suppressed it. He thought that he had almost been fooled. If he really was an exiled person, then he could have just sent him to join the Holy Nether Guard and his life would have been ruined. Why would he superfluously give him the position of Holy Nether Guard commander? This person didn't reveal anything at all. Just like Yuan Zhen, Fu Shan, and the other 2 garrison generals frowned, a dignified look in their eyes. This person was truly worthy of being a chess piece of the Holy Palace. Although he looked young, his methods were fierce. Although he appeared calm and gentle, the truth was that he wasn't easy to deal with. Without giving them time to think, Qin Yu rubbed his temples. I'm a bit tired. I'll go rest today. If there's anything else, let's talk about it later. Fu Shan nodded. I'll send you off to rest. Qin Yu waved his hand. There's no need. Everyone has many matters to attend to. So just find someone to lead the way. Seeing that Qin Yu didn't want to speak too much, Fu Shan called over an assistant. After giving a few orders, the assistant bowed and said, Commander, please follow me. Although he bowed, his voice was cold, without the least bit of respect. Qin Yu nodded without a care. The Holy Nether Guard was filled with deep grievances. He had to find a way to ease their relationship before he could consider winning them over. In this current situation, if Qin Yu were to display an attitude of wanting to be friends with everyone, he feared they would instantly be filled with dread. Everything in the world followed the same principle. Haste makes waste. Like this, Qin Yu followed behind this Holy Nether Guard. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, he slowly entered the floating city. Yuan Zhen licked his lips. Commander, this person has hidden himself quite deeply. That's right, in the eyes of all the Holy Nether Guards, Fu Shan was their only commander. As for this newcomer, if he really wanted to use a chicken feather as a token of authority, he would be beaten black and blue in the blink of an eye. Fu Shan's eyebrows relaxed. No matter how it is said, he is the commander of the Holy Nether Guard appointed by the Holy Palace. Be careful when you do things and don't let him grab hold of your weakness. Otherwise, even if you can withstand it, it won't be good if things become too tense. Yuan Zhen hesitated. Then what happens next? Before he finished speaking, everyone already knew what he was talking about. Fu Shan lightly said, Did we arrange for the Lord Commander's official residence? Yuan Zhen's eyes brightened. He smiled. Of course. Since the Lord Commander has arrived, we certainly wouldn't dare to neglect him. However, the Holy Nether Guard is trapped in an endless sea and is incomparably barren. In addition, the position of commander has been empty for many years. so the residence is a bit dilapidated and uninhabited. This is understandable. Fu Shan turned and walked away. He wanted to know just what sort of reaction this new young Lord Commander would have. A sharp light flashed in his eyes. This was because this reaction would provide him with an extremely important basis for his judgment. Just why had this new Lord Commander come? Holy Nether City was extremely large. After 100,000 years, it was more than enough time for a massive tribe to multiply. Thus, after Qin Yu entered the city and boarded the carriage, he saw many people along the way. There were no flying carriages here. Rather, they maintained the crude and primitive method of using powerful alien life forms as the driving force. For instance, the carriage Qin Yu was riding in right now was being pulled by 2 flood dragons. Unfortunately, such a dignified carriage wasn't able to win him the least bit of respect or awe. In fact, there was even more indifference and hostility mixed in with curiosity. The one responsible for driving the flood dragons was the Holy Nether Guard that led the way. This person wasn't tall or burly, but rather thin. After boarding the carriage, he didn't say a single word. A cold chill rose up from his body, and it was clear he didn't have any thoughts of flattering the new Lord Commander behind him. The flood dragons soared through the clouds at an extremely fast speed. Thus, when the carriage came to a stop, not too much time had passed. Qin Yu stepped down from the carriage and looked at the majestic atmosphere in front of him. This building was constructed from some sort of black skull from the seabed, and his lips twitched. It seemed that the degree of his unpopularity would continue to rise. Dilapidated, this word wasn't enough to describe Qin Yu's first impression. Rather, it was more accurate to call it ruins. The massive gate seemed to have experienced the chaos of war. Large pieces of black stone that had been glued together had been shattered by a tyrannical strength, faintly discernible in the weeds on the ground. Half of the gate was missing, and the remaining part was rotten beyond repair. It had long since been unable to serve as a shelter. Looking through the collapsed giant screen wall, one could see a lake that was nearly submerged in vegetation. The occasional exposed surface of the lake was covered in dark green algae. Qin Yu nearly laughed in anger. Did these holy nether guards really think that he wouldn't be angry? But thinking about it, perhaps they were waiting for him to be angry. Thus, after thinking about it several times, his complexion returned to normal. Although his entire face was hidden behind a hideous blood-red mask, the surprise and disappointment in the holy nether guards' eyes couldn't escape Qin Yu's eyes. He thought to himself that this was indeed the case, and his expression became even calmer. Go back and tell Fu Shan that this place is very unique. He's very considerate. As the icy cold holy nether guard heard this, he revealed a nervous expression for the first time. He couldn't discern anything from Qin Yu's expression, and he couldn't help but feel annoyed and disappointed. He cupped his hands across his chest and hurried away. Qin Yu reached out a hand and pushed against the miserable half of the gate. He watched helplessly as it crashed to the ground, smashing to pieces and filling the air with ash. Even though he was already mentally prepared, his lips still twitched. As he walked through the ruined courtyard, he could still feel the majestic background that hadn't been completely washed away by time. He could imagine just how lively and bustling this place must have been many years ago. Unfortunately, imagination was an illusion. If Qin Yu wanted to live here, he would have to do it himself. No matter what, he had to find a place to stay. After searching for a long time, he finally found a stone chamber near the rockery. This should have been a place used for seclusion. The materials used were extremely meticulous, and even though the array formation protecting it had long since been destroyed, it was still mostly intact. After cleaning it up, he took out an illumination bead from his storage ring. Qin Yu looked around and nodded. The environment wasn't too bad. At the very least, from the entrance, this messy courtyard still had a bit of beauty to it. People had to have an optimistic attitude that could find joy in sorrow. Only then would they be able to live comfortably. Moreover, There was an old saying that if he wanted to order others around, he had to at least let them vent their anger. Demonic Path, Holy Land, Small World, Mu family. As a descendant of the previous Holy Lord, even after losing half of their surname, they were still one of the top family influences of the demonic path. Cloud Grove City was the Mu family's fiefdom. It was managed so well that not even a drop of water could leak out. There were countless powerhouses under their command, and their influence was awe-inspiring. Today, in a courtyard in the city, a gray-robed Mu Xianlin was sitting on a stone bench, his aura cold and harsh. The space around him was filled with cryptic fluctuations. The power of an array formation isolated all auras from the outside world. Yao Bin must die, even if he has been exiled to the endless sea. His tone was calm and light, as if he were talking about what to eat for dinner. Mu Xianlin nodded with satisfaction. Mo, for you to think like this proves that you haven't been blinded by your achievements. The blue-robed youth across from him smiled, his temperament as warm as water. White sun boundary talent. His eyes were filled with praise and envy. If I underestimated him, wouldn't that be far too stupid? He stood up and cupped his hands together. Uncle, I'll have to trouble you with this matter. Mu Xianlin lightly said, I won't give him the chance to leave the endless sea. With a white sun boundary talent, he already has the qualifications to be buried in the endless sea. Uncle will send him on his way. Mu Mo turned and left, his eyes cold and indifferent. The position of Holy Lord was his. He absolutely couldn't allow any accidents to occur. Anyone who dared to stop him would die. To the surprise of the Holy Nether Guard, Qin Yu didn't move at all. He lived in that ruined courtyard like a transparent person. Nothing in Holy Nether City had changed at all. Of course, even if they didn't sense anything wrong from Qin Yu, Fu Shan and the others still didn't dare to be careless. They never stopped monitoring him. Moreover, this monitoring wasn't done in a secretive manner. Rather, it was done openly, clearly conveying a message of distrust and wariness. Thus, besides the Holy Nether Guards that walked back and forth, Qin Yu would often rest in a large abandoned garden at the back of the courtyard. From afar, he would often see a woman with a cold temperament, as if she were one with the surrounding sea. Although she was beautiful, her eyes were far too cold. They were like two translucent blades of ice that stabbed into the deepest depths of one's heart, causing a chill to crawl up one's back. Luckily, this woman only watched from afar without any intention of approaching. She also never disturbed Qin Yu. Every day, she would quietly look at him for a period of time before turning and leaving. Occasionally, a young man with thorns all over his body would appear. The two of them would whisper something to each other. The young man seemed to be trying to persuade her, but it was clear that he didn't succeed. Thus, when he looked at Qin Yu, his eyes became even colder. This was truly an undeserved calamity. Qin Yu curled his lips. He thought that he wasn't the one who asked her to come. If she could let her go, then he would be more than happy. If he could, he really wanted to say, "Young man, if you want to pursue a girl, you can't lack a certain toughness. If you're so weak right now, even if you manage to catch up to her in the future, you probably won't have any status in the future." He opened his eyes and glanced towards that direction. Indeed, the woman that came every day had come again. Qin Yu was already used to this and didn't care about her icy cold eyes. He leaned back and leaned against a stone tablet that he didn't know what it was made of. This stone tablet was tilted at an angle, so it was very comfortable to lean against. Closing his eyes, Zhang Xian was resting contentedly when his eyebrows suddenly shot up. When he opened his eyes, he saw a cold and beautiful face. Two thin lips were lightly touching, and a voice that was pleasant to the ears but cold enough to make one shiver. "Do you know what kind of stone tablet this is?" Without waiting for Qin Yu to reply, Hai Lanlan turned and walked away. Her tall and slender back exuded an angry and sorrowful aura. Qin Yu frowned. He stood up and turned around. Looking at the gray and unremarkable stone tablet that was stuck into the ground. He thought for a moment and then began to clean it up. A moment later, Qin Yu stood in front of the stone tablet. He stared at it for a long time and then gently sighed. He looked in the direction that Shui Lanlan had disappeared in and then turned to leave. On the second day, Hai Lanlan didn't appear. The third day was a repeat of the second day. After that, he didn't see that cold figure again for a long time. Qin Yu faintly guessed what was going on. He couldn't help but feel a bit guilty, but he soon suppressed it. His time was precious, and he naturally wouldn't waste it on useless negative emotions that would affect his cultivation. Water flows have sound, water flows have quality, perseverance, reversal, softness, hardness, as he whispered to himself. Qin Yu lifted a hand. His 5 fingers constantly brushed the air, as if he could feel some invisible existence. Chapter 533. Qin, you didn't fully understand just how powerful the Emperor-level demon body was. This was because after he borrowed the demon blood crystal to make his breakthrough, his mortal body had been undergoing some sort of evolutionary transformation. But he could clearly feel every inch of his flesh, blood, muscles, and bones constantly increasing in strength. Qin Yu's demon body started out at the general level, and then he broke into the golden core realm. After that, every boundary would rise accordingly. The martial level corresponded to nascent soul, the king level corresponded to divine soul, and the emperor level corresponded to blue sea. Then, the realm that the emperor level corresponded to should be the calamity, immortal realm. The demon body was the foundation of countless great supernatural powers of the demonic path. But in essence, it was the strongest body transformation method of the demonic path. Qin Yu didn't know just how terrifying the bodily strength of the emperor-level demon body was, but he knew that it was enough to suppress all blue seas. Moreover, the demon body also had a terrifying effect on increasing one's combat strength. Once his mortal body completely transformed and his emperor-level demon body was consolidated, Qin Yu's strength would inevitably rise once more. He was well aware of all of this, but this wasn't a reason for him to relax. Just how vast was the land of divinity and demons! The proud elites of heaven were as numerous as the endless sea of stars. Disregarding everything else, just meeting Zhao Qianyuan alone was enough for Qin Yu to be cautious. Thinking about it, even when he was in the Demon Ascension Gate's small world and faced the resurrected monster race, Great Emperor, Zhao Qianyuan hadn't used his full strength. He had immediately retreated as soon as he sensed something was wrong. Qin Yu had an intuition that he was hiding something. Even what he saw today was only the part he was willing to expose. The stronger he became, the more he could feel the invisible pressure coming from Zhao Qianyuan. With such a character by his side, how could Qin Yu dare to be careless? In the past, when he was a little disciple of the Eastern Mountain sect in the land of exiles, after he obtained the little blue lamp, he stepped onto a great Tao of cultivation that was far beyond his expectations. Although there were countless dangers along the way, and he had fallen into countless hopeless situations on the verge of death, Qin Yu's eyes still widened as he experienced just how vast and boundless the world was. Now he was only a single step away from the peak of the world. Moreover, he had all sorts of lucky chances and good fortune, and he had many cards in his hands. All of this gave Qin Yu enough confidence to look up at the unsurpassed starry skies and decide to become the most dazzling one. His demon body broke through the Emperor realm, and he was just a step away from the Saint Lord realm. Qin Yu's mind had finally undergone a thorough transformation. He was still filled with enmity towards the immortal sect, but he had already regarded this matter as a tempering in his climb to the highest great Tao and not his ultimate goal. Although the process hadn't changed, the meaning it represented was completely different. Now, Qin Yu had the boldness to embrace the heavens and earth. Since he had the heart to ascend to the heavens, he naturally had to put in more effort than ordinary people. Otherwise, even if he had a good hand of cards, he would only be beaten to a pulp in the end. As Qin Yu's mind and will were transforming, and he was diligently cultivating to attack the future, there was actually someone who was in a daze. He didn't know how, but for some unknown reason, he was struck by a stroke of bad luck. The unlucky one was a squad leader of the true Devil Guards. His name was Wang Chao, and he had implicated his two sworn brothers who had always followed his lead. Looking at the cold face of the manager of the Ministry of Justice, Wang Chao was bewildered. He hadn't pulled himself together yet. He had just gone out for a drink, and at most he had found some girls after drinking. Moreover, he wasn't on duty. This kind of thing that everyone had agreed on privately, how could he be robbed of his position and banished to the endless sea? What are you doing here? The order has already been given. Do you want to disobey it? The manager of the Ministry of Justice's voice was harsh, but there was a bit of regret deep in his eyes. He didn't know who Wang Chao had offended, but since this was an order from above, he didn't dare to refuse. His lips moved before he finally sighed. Wang Chao was familiar with the internal affairs of the true Demon Guards. He knew that since things had reached this step, there was no way to reverse it. He handed over his identity token and took off the true Demon Guard armor. Wang Chao's eyes turned red as he bowed and left. Then, outside the Ministry of Justice's courtyard, he saw his two brothers who had suffered the same fate. The three of them exchanged several words before falling silent. Wang Chao's voice was bitter. "Second brother, third brother, I'm really sorry. It was big brother who implicated you." Hua Yanting forced a smile. "Big brother, what are you saying? Yesterday, the three of us went out together. Now that we've been plotted against, it's our bad luck. How can we blame you?" "Third brother is right," Yellow Mountain said in a low voice. "You and I already said that we would endure thick and thin together. So what if we were banished to the endless sea? As long as we're together, anything is possible." Hua Yanting hurried to say, That's right, that's right. Don't forget that the one with the White Sun Realm cultivation base is in the endless sea. We can seize this chance to hug his thigh. Perhaps one day we will come back to kill him." These words were just to comfort themselves. The endless sea was a tomb of the living dead. If they were banished there, if their spirit and willpower weren't strong enough, their lives would be over. They didn't know what Yao Bin's current appearance was, and they wanted to join him. Stop dreaming. Wang Chao's face stiffened. He suddenly remembered that when he was in the heavenly demon city, he had accidentally seen the demon servant and Yen Lu, the two masters, entering the sun-glow perching residence. Thinking about the sudden incident today, although the manager of the Ministry of Justice was cold, he still had a little bit of pity in his eyes. He suddenly had an idea. Could it be, although he wasn't sure, it was at least a possibility? If it was true, being sent to the endless sea wasn't just a banishment, but a chance that many people could only dream of. As soon as he thought of this, his heart relaxed. He felt that his bleak future had become much brighter, and his body was filled with strength. His thoughts turned. He remembered that the three of them would be sent to the endless sea as punishment. In order to avoid any resentment between the brothers, it was best to tell them his guess. After all, going out yesterday was most likely his suggestion. Although he was confident in their friendship, why would he use this matter to test their brotherhood? Wang Chao coughed. "Second brother, third brother, come closer." A moment later, Hua Yanting and Huang Shan's eyes brightened. Although they found it hard to believe, they had known Wang Chao for many years. They believed in his character and that he wouldn't lie. The road has turned around. In the Ministry of Justice's courtyard, some people already knew the final result of the punishment. As they looked at the three people outside, their eyes were filled with pity. It had to be known that the true demon guard spots were extremely popular within the demonic path. It was unknown how much effort and luck these three people had put in to be selected. But now it had all come to nothing. Not only had they lost their future and status, but they had also been exiled to the endless sea. They feared that they would never be able to leave again in this life. This was simply heart-wrenching. It was even more painful than being drenched in blood. But soon a puzzling scene occurred. It was unknown what the three depressed people whispered to each other, but they suddenly became spirited and their eyes shined. They even laughed, their voices filled with excitement. This was madness. Looking at the backs of Wang Chao's group of three leaving, the demonic path cultivators in the Ministry of Justice revealed looks of pity. They really couldn't withstand such a heavy blow. In the blink of an eye, these three people had turned into idiots, as if their brains had been damaged. Soon, news of Wang Chao, Hua Yanting, and Huang Shan losing their minds and being sent to the endless sea as punishment quickly spread throughout the true demon guard circle and even to the outside world. And at this time, the three nervous and excited people had already boarded a speed car heading towards the endless sea. The true demon guard squad responsible for escorting them was an old friend of Wang Chao's group. The squad captain said some comforting words. Seeing Wang Chao's natural response, he didn't believe the rumors. But after carefully observing them, he discovered that there was a hint of anticipation in their eyes. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. He winked at his subordinates, indicating for them to be careful. When the squad captain returned, the rumors of the three people losing their minds became even louder. It evolved into a version where the three of them were immersed in their inner world. Although they appeared normal on the surface, they had actually gone completely insane. This caused others to sigh with emotion. Of course, these things had nothing to do with the three people who had entered the endless sea. They were walking forward without hesitation, clinging onto the only thigh that could save their lives. Thus, in Qin Yu's ruined residence, three guests were welcomed for the first time. Wang Chao, Hua Yanting, Huang Shan. The three people fell to their knees. Greetings, Commander. This was the first time that Qin Yu felt the dignity of the Holy Nether Guard commander. Although he didn't care too much about it, he still felt happy. Why did you come here? Qin Yu had the three of them stand up. With just a few words, the three men's eyes turned red. Of course, most of these emotions were feigned. But if they didn't do this, how could the commander feel compassion for them and accept them as his subordinates? This was all a prearranged plot. After recounting their tragic experiences, Wang Chao fell to his knees once more. Us three brothers have nowhere to go. I hope that commander can take us in. In the future, we will go through fire and water without hesitation. Hua Yanting and Huang Shan followed suit. They lowered their heads, nervousness in their eyes. Qin Yu had a helpless expression. After entering the endless sea, I can't even protect myself, so how can I take you in? The three of you seem to have come to the wrong place. Wang Chao's heart tightened, but he didn't panic too much. Yao Bin knew that someone was targeting him. If he didn't even have this much caution, then he would have to seriously consider whether or not his decision was wrong. Commander, we sincerely pledge our allegiance to you, and we don't dare to have any ill intentions. We only hope that one day you can rise up and take us away from here. He paused for a moment. Commander's residence is very large. Can we live far away? You can observe us and make your decision later. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He lightly said, This place has already become ruins. If you want to live here, then tidy up yourselves. I won't accompany you any longer. He turned and left. Wang Chao hurriedly bowed. Farewell, Lord Commander. Rising up, the three of them glanced at each other. They could all see the excitement in each other's hearts. The facts were clear. After Yao Bin entered the endless sea, he hadn't given up on himself because his mind had been wounded. The more cautious he was, the more it proved that he had ambitions in his heart. This just happened to be what they wanted. At this time, the three of them finally felt a bit more at ease. The reason they were so excited and happy before was because they were trying to cheer themselves up. It was a kind of psychological hint to each other. Wang Chao took a deep breath. All right, let's go to the front yard and find a place to live. Whether or not we can pass the test will depend on our performance. Hua Yanting and Yellow Mountain earnestly nodded. In the abandoned commander's residence, there were now 3 new residents. Fu Shan soon learned of this, but he didn't care much about it. The 3 new Holy Nether Guards weren't willing to submit to their fate and tried to resist. They were all newcomers, so it was normal for them to attach themselves to Yao Bin. However, the only thing that left him puzzled was that Yao Bin was far too quiet. He didn't know why, but he felt a bit restless in his heart. He always felt that this surname, Yao, would stir up some great event one day. Qin Yu continued his routine every day. His life hadn't changed much from before, but when he cultivated, he was a bit more cautious and avoided the attention of Wang Chao and the others. Knowing that Qin Yu didn't want to get too close to them, Wang Chao and the others didn't try to approach him. However, in order to show their sincerity and obedience, the 3 of them were still cautious and tried to add points in Qin Yu's heart. For instance, when he was cultivating, the 3 of them would discreetly spread out and wander around him. When Qin Yu rested, he would diligently clean up the ruins of the residence. Occasionally, they would come to greet him. Their voices were respectful, but they didn't delay him. They came in a hurry and left in a hurry. On the surface, Qin Yu didn't seem to care, but he was carefully scrutinizing the 3 of them, gradually washing away his suspicions. Wang Chao and the others shouldn't have been sent here to deal with him. Moreover, taking a step back, as long as he was careful enough, no matter how good their acting skills were, it would be impossible for them to harm him with their strength. But Qin Yu didn't show any intention of accepting them. Like an eagle, he had to make them remember just how difficult it was to obtain his trust. Only like this would they cherish this trust in the future. Since Qin Yu had decided to walk the road to the heavens without any support, he naturally had to create a team that would follow him and be loyal to him. But while Qin Yu was peacefully cultivating and didn't want to cause any trouble, there were some people that didn't want to see him jump around like this. Although the endless sea was a forbidden land, as long as one had enough strength and patience, they would eventually find a chance to attack. The Mu family had prepared for a long time. Now, they finally thrust out their sword. They used the laws of spring and autumn, without the slightest trace of blood. In the end, the talent of a White Sun boundary martial artist wasn't ordinary. Even if everyone knew that it was them who did this, there was no evidence. This would save them a great deal of trouble. On this day, Wang Chao, who was patrolling, stopped a Holy Nether Guard outside the door. "Who are you?" The Holy Nether Guard cupped his hands together, his voice anxious. "I have been ordered to inform Lord Commander that a forbidden land in Holy Nether City has suddenly opened. Lord Fu Shan and the others have already rushed over. This matter is of great importance, so I ask that Lord Commander immediately go." Wang Chao's heart skipped a beat. The Holy Nether Guard had always been the most mysterious inheritance in the Holy Palace. He didn't dare to be careless. Who knew if something bad would happen? "I'll have to ask you to wait a moment. I will immediately go in and report." A moment later, Qin Yu appeared outside the mansion. After Wang Chao and the other 2 had repaired the mansion, it had restored a bit of its former glory. At the very least, standing here wouldn't make one feel awkward. What happened? The Holy Nether Guard was even more anxious. "Lord Commander, this matter is extremely urgent. Please follow me, and I will tell you everything on the way." Qin Yu frowned. He nodded and said, "Lead the way." Wang Chao and the other 2 were about to follow when they were stopped by the Holy Nether Guard. "Commander, this matter involves the secrets of the Holy Nether Guard." "What do you think?" Qin Yu lifted a hand. "You all stay behind." "Thank you for your understanding, Commander." The guard hurriedly led the way as he explained the situation. The cultivation method passed down by the Holy Nether Guard was to absorb the slaughter energy from underground and fuse it into one's body, turning it into tyrannical strength. The advantage of this cultivation method was that one's strength rose quickly, and it was also powerful. In a desperate battle, it could capture the heart and soul of an enemy. The disadvantage was that one's mind would be affected. Normally, the Holy Nether Guard had a special soul protection technique that could suppress the violence in their hearts so that they wouldn't lose control. But once the slaughter energy from underground erupted, It would break through the bottom line of the mind and cause the Holy Nether Guard to lose control on a large scale, causing terrifying consequences. The Holy Nether Guard anxiously said, "Lord Commander, the place where we cultivate and absorb slaughter energy originally has a powerful seal suppressing it. But for some unknown reason, the seal has suddenly broken. The situation is extremely urgent." He looked up at the completely sealed carriage and forced a smile. "In order to prevent news from leaking out and causing widespread panic, I can only have Lord Commander hide here. This is really disrespectful." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Before entering the endless sea, Zhao Qianyuan had hurriedly met with him and told him some matters regarding the Holy Nether Guard. This was one of them. Could it be that he was overthinking things and there really was an accident today? After a long time, the carriage stopped. It seemed that the journey was far. The Holy Nether Guard pushed open the carriage and jumped down. "Lord Commander, the seal is in front of us. We don't have the qualifications to enter, so we can only send you here." Qin Yu stepped out. He looked at the place where the guard was pointing and his pupils shrank. He slowly said, "Are you sure it's this place?" With just these words, the two Holy Nether Guards who were leading the way and driving the carriage caught their breath. "Yes, Lord Fushan is inside." They braced themselves and said. They seemed to realize how stiff they were at this time, and their hearts constantly sank. Because the two of them had their heads lowered, they didn't notice the strange look that flashed across Qin Yu's face. He looked at this common-looking, low-lying area in front of him, and his lips curved up in a smile.